Beautiful July 8th, 2019. As you can see from outside, with every torrential downpour and sodium plane comes rainbows and sunshine. So hopefully the weather passes us and we get summer finally, because we need summer. Okay. Members of Council, you have an agenda before you, and I'm going to ask that we shift the agenda items a little bit and add 9.1, which is the RCMP SRO, and then all subsequent business items will be shifted down to 2, 3, 4, 5, and etc. Okay. Administration, anything else to add? Okay. With that, Deputy Mayor, if I can have a motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I make a motion that Town Council adopt the July 28, 2019 regular council meeting agenda with
as amended.
amendments. Yes.
Thank you. Council, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Okay. Moving on, this is our public input session. This is where we allow residents of the town of Stony and Plain to talk about anything that's not on the current agenda. So if there's anybody in the chambers like to address council on something that's not on the agenda, please come forward now. Pardon? No, it does not include you guys. Okay, so that we end that session. Next thing is presentations and delegations. Today we have one presentation, and it is regarding the 2019 municipal census. Good evening, and welcome to the presenters. Again, there is a sign-up sheet. If you can write your names on a sign-up sheet, introduce yourselves to council, and speak directly into the mics so that everyone in the gallery and those at home can listen and hear. Thank you.
I'm here and pleased to present the 2019 municipal census results. As part of the team, I am the project sponsor. I have with me tonight presenting Darren Young with ISL Engineering and Land Services. He is a project manager. Aaron Bombach, also with ISL Engineering and Land Services, is the deputy project manager and demographics. And Carl Enright is our senior census coordinator. I'm pleased to pass this off to them for the presentation.
All right, thank you, Eva. Your Worship and members of council. As Eva mentioned, I am Darren Young. I'm our planning lead at ISL on the growth analysis and management front, and we thank you for the opportunity today to present and unveil your municipal census results from the 2016 municipal census. The purpose of this presentation is just to provide a high-level overview of the municipal census and the results for you here today. So our agenda today, we've kind of set out 4 different sections here. We are going to run through over the project schedule, the methodology used throughout the census. We'll we'll walk through the highlights and the key findings, and we'll also present you the overall results. So the project scope for the municipal census, we basically had 4 core goals. We wanted to encourage a 30% of your residents to provide their responses online through the online census platform offered by the City of Airdrie. Our goal was to enumerate 99.9% of your population and verify the census within an error rate less of 5%. 5% is the threshold for municipal affairs for municipal census validation. We also wanted to complete the municipal census by June 12th. So our schedule for the municipal census this past year involved project planning with Eva and Carl as your veteran census coordinator between February 12th and April 30th. Our online census campaign then occurred throughout the enumeration period from May 1st to June 12th. The latter half of that period from May 15th to June 12th is where the door-to-door campaign occurred. So those first 2 weeks between May 1st and the 14th was where the online census aspect of the census was open. On June 12th, the census ended, and we spent the 12th to the 30th working through the project reporting and the quality assurance, with the last 8 days or so focused on preparing the final demographic report. So the municipal census had 5 questions with the 6th question intended for the residents that were enumerated door to door. These first 5 questions involved what was the total number of usual residents per year at each address on May 1st of 2019, what are the ages of each resident, what are the genders of each resident, and what is the place of work for each resident, as well as the type of dwelling you live in. For those households that were enumerated at the door by our census enumerators, a phone number for each address completed by enumerator was requested. This helped with our quality assurance. So with respect to the highlights, overall, there was just under 7,330 total addresses enumerated within the town. 100% of those addresses were completed. 43% of the addresses were completed by residents online. You'll think back to a couple slides ago where we had that 30% goal. So the residents of Stony Plain did a very good job in smashing that goal for us. And so 99.9% of the population was in fact counted as well. So if I could just walk through some of the data quality highlights with you. We are required to go through a quality assurance process for 381 of your 7,329 addresses, and only 6 errors were identified. This resulted in an error rate of 1.57%, which is well below the 5% threshold identified by municipal affairs. So the key findings that came out of the census and the report that's before you here today is the population of the town and its growth since 2016, the demographics by subdivision, the age and gender demographics of your community, household size, the types of occupied dwellings, and the places of work. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Aaron Bombach, who will walk you through the enumeration areas and the results.
All right. So as part of collecting the data and reporting on the results, planning and implementation was required for enumerating the town. Sorry, a little closer. So a total of 13 census enumeration areas were used in the 2019 municipal census to assist enumerators with successful data collection. The goal of the enumeration was to keep each EA under 750 dwellings to ensure successful coverage for data collection. 2 enumeration areas, 12 and 13, are not represented on the map, as these areas are used to categorize the collective dwellings for the enumeration process. So just make note of that. And essentially by using this approach, the town was broken down into manageable zones for 12 enumerators to collect data and complete the door-to-door campaign. So moving into the results for population and growth. So the total population for the town of Stony Plain in 2019 was 17,842, which is an increase of 3.8% or 653 people over the 2016 federal census population count of 17,189. So the average annual growth rate over the 3-year period between 2016 and 2019 is 1.3%. So this map just provides a visual representation of the 2019 population counts by subdivision in Stony Plain. The red indicates a range of population counts between 0 to 400. Orange is 400 to 800. Yellow, 800 to 1,200. Light green is the 1,200 to 1,600. And dark green represents over 1,600. So as you can see, the greatest populations are within Lake Westera, Old Town, and Forest Green, followed by significant populations in Willow Park, Meridian Heights, St. Andrews, Greybrier, and Fairways. When we look at demographics by subdivision, the largest population counts occurred in Lake Westera of 1,970 residents, Old Town, 1,647 residents, and Forest Green of 1,151 residents. So not surprisingly, the highest percentage of children also, ages 0 to 14 in Stony Plain, can also be found in Lake Westera and Old Town. Again, moving on to demographics by subdivision, the lowest population counts occurred in Some Meadows and North Business Park and the annexed areas. So this displays a common spatial distribution of populations in mid-sized towns and cities where you often see high populations that are typically located in mature established subdivisions or neighborhoods, while less populated areas are often present in the undeveloped areas or the periphery of the town. Moving on to the age and gender for the town of Stony Plain. In 2019, Stony Plain contains slightly more females, 51.7%, the males at 48.3%, with a sex ratio 93.45 and a dependency ratio of 76.68. So in addition, 15 residents reported their gender as other, which is the first time Stony Plain has asked this question on gender. In 2019, Stony Plain remains a family-oriented community with adults aging in place. The population pyramid reflects, through its shape, different peaks in population cohorts for children and youth under 15 years of age, and also demonstrates a gradual increase in senior populations reaching retirement with 65 years and over. So the population pyramid provides basically information on how significant age cohorts have changed over time. The proportion of children 0 to 4 and the 30 to 34 age cohort experienced a slight decline, while the 55 to 59 age cohort have increased. So this demographic shift indicates upward movement in the population pyramid, demonstrating aging population, which is a common trend among many municipalities in Alberta. Moving on to the results for household size. Overall, households with 2 people comprise the largest percentages in Stony Plain. Based on occupied dwellings, average household size is 2.58 people per household in 2019. As a comparison with Alberta and Canada as a whole, the average household size from the 2016 federal census was 2.66 people per household at the provincial level and 2.5 pph at the national level. So the average household size in Stony Plain is similar to the national level and slightly below the provincial level. Looking at dwelling types for Stony Plain, the overall most prevalent dwelling type in Stony Plain is the single detached dwellings, comprising 63.4% of the total occupied housing stock. Other dwelling types include multi-unit dwellings at 14.4%, duplexes and semi-detached dwellings at 10.1%, row housing at 2.6%, manufactured or mobile homes at 4.5%. So collective dwellings or hotels, group care facilities or seniors group homes, secondary suites all comprised 3.2% of the total occupied housing stock. So this map just illustrates the proportion of dwelling types by subdivision in Stony Plain and displays the high proportion of single attached dwellings indicated in blue, the blue portion of the pie chart per subdivision, and multi-unit dwellings indicated in green throughout the town. Moving on to results by place of work. So in 2019, a total of 14,398 residents answered the place of work question. And of these, 14.5% of residents reported they work in Stony Plain, 17.4% reported they were employed in Edmonton, 8.1% in Spruce Grove, 5.6% in Parkland County, and 6.6% elsewhere in the Edmonton region. So a sizable portion also reported, 36.4%, that their place of work was a stay-at-home parent, student, retired, or not employed. So additionally, there's a high number of females and males. They have a place of work as other, 5,192. Edmonton, 2,497. Stony Plain, 2,082. So overall, there are high proportions of females working in Stony Plain at 65.4%, Spruce Grove 64.5%, the males, and a high number of males have a place of work within Edmonton as 1,450, elsewhere in the Edmonton region at 736. There are high proportions of males working in Fort McMurray at 90.6, and elsewhere in the Edmonton region at 77.5% than females. So overall, only 721 males work within Stony Plain. And from these tables, only 10 respondents, or 0.1%, identified as other, for which answers to both the gender and place of work questions were provided. And a high number and proportion of these individuals identified their place of work to be in Edmonton at 2, elsewhere in the Edmonton region at 2, and other. So this concludes our presentation for the 2019 municipal census. We would like to thank the residents of Stony Plain for their participation. I also would also like to express a special thank you to Eva and the town administration, the hired enumerators, and the project team for all the hard work, as the successful completion of the census would not have been possible without everyone's involvement. So I guess ISL is happy to answer any questions or comments from council on the census. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation and the in-depth work that ISL did in our community. Actually, I'm amazed by the fact that we had 43% of residents in the community access the web portal to sign in and get done. So, which is what, 13% higher than what you guys were predicting of 30%. So, which is amazing, which means our community is very highly connected and understands technology more than we think. Just one quick question for you. through your charts of population-wise in terms of density, I understand certain areas have higher density because of the way that it's developed and also because of the largest subdivision pocket. Did you guys break it down to what is the actually population per net developable acre? Because,
Right.
you know, some, like, Jutland Ridge had only 60 because it's a very, very small subdivision,
Right.
whereas West Terre has huge.
Right. Your worship, and I understand that's probably also coming from a little bit from the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Growth Plan and their interest in population or even dwelling units per net residential hectare. So at this point, we did not include that as part of our analysis, but is one of those things that has been identified to the administration as to maybe a potential way to leverage the census in terms of monitoring the population density and the dwelling unit density at finer levels of detail overall for the town of Stony Plain.
Okay, thank you. Members of council, any questions and comments? Councillor Bennett?
Just one, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I can't tell from here and the presentation I have on another screen. So I was surprised at the amount of population in Old Town, especially considering we don't really have a lot of apartment buildings there, unless Old Town included some of the apartments over here by Red and on the other side of 48th Street. So what was the definition or the parameters for Old Town?
So we did the census for Old Town. We included both the north and south of Old Town. So for this report, it's combining both north and south.
Yeah, both north and south of the rail line here. If you look on this map that's in front of you, I don't know if there's a cursor. Yeah. So Old Town comprises this piece crossing the rail line and wrapping around the downtown here. And there's also an island of Old Town over here as well. And so that might contribute to the higher number than expected.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Any other questions, comments? No. Maybe just a question then, since Old Town was brought up. So why do we have that one section of Old Town, which is part of, I believe that is the Forest Green area? No, it's past the Forest Green area. Yeah, the woodlands?
Are you referring to this area where I believe the cursor is right now?
Yes, because it's,
Green.
because we have Old Town here, here, and here. So it's kind of weird that we have a subdivision that hops another subdivision to come back through.
Correct, and that was one of the observations we had during the municipal census, is that the address files and the subdivision files that maintained by the town of Stony Plain didn't quite align and so forth. So one of the lessons learned coming out of this is to put a little bit more extra effort at the planning stage to overcome some of these things and get better congruence with your GIS with the actual subdivision boundaries in that system.
Councilor Matties?
And with regards to the number of people that are not working in our community, how does that compare with other communities?
At this point, we haven't done a comparison of that, but that's something, some information we could share through Eva, and then maybe Eva can pass that along through to you, Councillor Matties.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Nope. See none. Thank you very much for your work and your presentation, and we look forward to some other analysis coming out of this.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, Council, that ends our presentations and delegations. Moving on to statutory public hearings. Today we have one, which is 5.1 for 2614/DMP/19 for municipal reserve. Again, this is a public hearing. I will call the hearing to order. And first, the applicant will get a chance to speak. The members of council get to ask questions of understanding and clarity. Then after that, oh, I missed it actually. So actually, the presentation is done first by our staff. Then then council gets to ask questions of understanding and clarity. The next is all those that are in favor to speak. And then again, council gets to ask questions of clarity and understanding. And all those that are opposed to the proposed bylaw change get a chance to speak. And again, council gets to ask questions of clarity and understanding. Then after that, then all those with, I want to make a general comment to the bylaw change gets a chance to speak, and council gets to ask questions of clarity and understanding. After that, then the applicant gets a chance to, again, to address council if they like, and then council gets to ask questions of clarity. From that closes the public hearing, so that's the only time that it's all recorded for the public hearing. Then later on in business items, the council will deal with this under 8.1 under municipal reserve. Okay, so with that, I call the bylaw 2614 DMP/19 to order. So administration.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application here on the planning framework in Stony Plain is at the area structure plan level. Somewhat into this level as well, given that it's a municipal reserve land swap, including a designation and a disposal. It kind of hybrid. It's somewhere in between here, I'll say. The application itself is located at the intersection of Highway 628 and Boulder Boulevard in the southwest corner here, involving two different parcels. The purpose, again, is to dispose and designate municipal reserve lands to facilitate a municipal reserve land swap between Plan 1222965, Block 3, Lot 13 MR, and Plan 0521452, Block 3, Lot 3. You can just see here as I zoom in for some context. So this, again, is Veterans Boulevard here, 44th Avenue, Sun Meadows Close, loops around here. And currently, you can kind of see here, 28th Street is just over here by the Tim Hortons that's been built off of 28th Street. And there's a trail that currently winds through Adam Creek over just to the north of Sun Meadows and then down along the edge here. As part of this, a requirement under the Municipal Government Act is that we post a sign notification of the bylaw. So the applicant has posted this sign, which reflects the newspaper advertisement that was in the paper on June 28th and July 5th. This here is a blow-up of the application itself in terms of, so the town owns this red area here as well as the balance of the lot, this area through here. So what's actually happening is this area here is being disposed of as a municipal reserve, and the applicant, which owns the land up here, the blue area here would be designated as municipal reserve and provided to the town. And the areas are approximately equal, slightly larger actually in the blue area than in the, but by 0.0, less than 0.01 of a hectare. Some additional information provided by the applicant shows here that the intent of the applicant is actually to provide this land back to the town as a road right-of-way, including a little strip up here. This here is a subdivision application that is going concurrently with this municipal reserve land swap application. It would subdivide the larger lot here into 3 separate parcels, and then again add this area here to have one municipal reserve here at the end of the road right-of-way as proposed. The applicant has provided some additional information here. I believe this one here is a landscaping plan just showing some of the trees, some location of some potential buildings being proposed. It's being proposed as a phased development, so this area here being phase 1, this area in the back being phase 2. And again, just to stress, the applicant before you is just for this area here to be disposed of as municipal reserve and this area back here to be added as municipal reserve. Just to ensure that the fire truck can safely go through, the applicant has provided some diagrams and some engineering work to show that as well through here. And this here shows the servicing. So again, there's some servicing stubs that are over here for water, sanitary, and stormwater, and all of them would be directed through town-owned land, the road right-of-way in here, and then stubbed out to each of the individual 3 different lots here. This is a markup of the realignment of the trail. It would come across here. So right now there's a trail that runs approximately halfway through this road, and ultimately that would be turned into a drive access, and then the trail would be diverted to the north here with a fence similar to those, if anyone's familiar with on Veterans Boulevard by Graybrier Drive. There's a fence just on the edge there. Something to that effect there might be what it would look like. There's the possibility to put some benches. I believe there's another. This here's just kind of looking down the trail here to show the area. And again, this here is our discussion map that shows the area. So again, it would have a continuation of this trail that would come down where it currently is. It would be temporarily removed during the construction, and then it would be rebuilt north of the existing trail for the portion here that is red. In terms of the circulation, we did get some comments back, but it was either no objection, no comments, or no concerns. That's everything I have to report that's beyond the report itself. If council has any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Members of council, any questions for understanding and clarity? Councillor Matties?
Your worship, through to administration. My question is with regards to the trail connection that's through there. Who is responsible for doing that? And if it's the town, is there a cost, or is that the developer?
Through your worship to Councillor Matties, it would be the responsibility of the applicant, the developer in this case, to redo the trail in its entirety.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of clarity? Councillor Meyer, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in reference to page 46, it's a bullet under site servicing design. It's the 5th bullet, storm scepter. Storm scepter will be installed at the gas bar to ensure that no petroleum products enter into the storm. I'm just curious, with our recent rainfall event, at what point and what capacities the storm scepter can handle, and what exactly is planned there?
Through your worship to Councillor Myers. In this case, the drainage for this entire lot has already been accounted for in the Jutland Ridge storm pond. So there's actually a stormwater pipe that goes here that would come down, go down the cul-de-sac through here and into that. So the stormwater that would actually fall within this area is designed to go down into Jutland Ridge, so it has been accommodated there. There is a drainage ditch to the south that I'll just make reference to that actually has some of this area here and the road right-of-way for Veterans Boulevard that has been designed as part of the work of Veterans Boulevard from last year when it was constructed, that does accommodate for this area here in that drainage ditch, and then that does drain into Adam Creek via a little ditch through there.
Okay. So I think the question was, because that there is a storm scepter there, how does that work to make sure that water doesn't overflow and get into our storm management pond and the creek?
Your worship, the storm scepter would be part of the on-site drainage system, which is designed for a 1 in 5 storm.
And then just another follow-up question, it's sort of similar, and I wish I had the report to refer back to, but a few months ago when we got our stormwater management master plan, there had been some comment alluding to a potential conflict with Spruce Grove in terms of drainage in that area. Is this site in any way related to that?
Your worship, we're not aware of any conflict with the town of Spruce Grove's plans. There is some interest in working collaboratively on the lands to the east of here, but those discussions, I guess, will continue based on developments that occur in the future. There's no implication on this property on those circumstances as we know them today.
Any other questions of clarity and understanding? Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to administration. In respect to the road right-of-way or the lands being swapped with that road there, will the developer be required to allow access to that road for the properties from the south of that?
Through your worship to Councillor Laurie, discussions have taken place with the applicant or the landowner to the south here. Given the drainage ditch that has been built through here, there is no, I guess ultimately, no, there would not be any connection or access to the south from there. Previously, maybe about 3-4 years ago, there was talk about having a mutual access here. A subdivision was approved for this area that actually required that, and the municipal government board actually rejected that based on a mutual understanding between the town and the applicant that this landowner here did not want that. Both applicants agreed with that, so there hasn't been any planning for access off of that to the south.
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. See none. Thank you for your presentation, administration. Now I'll call forward to the applicant to come forward. So, good evening. There is a sign-up sheet, so please, again, sign your name to that sheet. Introduce yourself to council, and then speak directly into the mic, please.
Good evening, Your Worship, Mayor Choi, members of council, staff. My name is David Longpre, and I'm from Vancouver, and I'm here tonight with my co-venture partner, brother Warren Longpre, who's also from Vancouver. Warren and I have come together over the past 30 years and collaborated on a number of retail developments, about 700,000 square feet, and successfully developed a number of residential and retail projects, mostly in BC. But I wouldn't say that we are strangers to Alberta. Warren has been extensively involved in projects in Fort McMurray and Lloydminster, and I myself have been involved in projects in Grand Prairie and Lethbridge. So we come across the Rockies, but certainly not as strangers. The reason for tonight's public hearing is something that any person or any developer who would have purchased this property would have inherited. And so we knew it when we first took interest in the property, and we started working with staff back in December through till now. I would say that the good news in this is that staff, we have found, has been absolutely excellent to work with. We've both cooperated with each other, and I think we've come up with good solutions to the situation, which is really, I guess, the redevelopment of Veterans Way and the intersection of Veterans Way and Highway 16A. But the important thing there is that the cooperation that we've had with each other, I think, has culminated in something that's very important to the community and to council, which is that the public amenity of the pathway is kept intact and will continue to be in place, which will be at our expense, as you heard tonight. And we're prepared to incorporate it, not as part of our development, as part of the lands that stay under the municipal reserve at the end result. But I think the path will be as good or better. We'll be implementing little safety fences. We're going to have some benches, landscaping on our side, and we're very pleased that that'll be the end result upon success of tonight's public hearing.
Okay. Thank you much for your presentation there, David. Members of council, any questions of clarity and understanding? Councillor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering about the timeline of the trail system there. I have walked that trail system for many, many years. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous path through there. And it's only recently that we can go all the way to Veterans Boulevard. And that was a very nice amenity. So my question is, when we exchange that land and you redo the path, how long are we going to have to go without the trail system meeting up to Veterans Boulevard again? Do you understand what I mean? Because we'll be adjusting that trail and it won't be built to the standard that you want it to be built to. That'll take time, right, to develop the whole thing. So are we going to miss out on being able to complete that loop to Veterans Boulevard for a long time? 3, 4 years? Or, so that's what I'm interested in, is the timeline for when we will see that trail system meet up to Veterans Boulevard again.
It's certainly not going to be years. Just so you know, under our own agenda, we're attempting to, and I believe we'll be successful in starting construction this fall, or late this summer. There's a portion of the trail we would have to deconstruct and install services and then reconstruct. And then there's a portion of the trail that will be part of the construction. All of that, given the timing and winters here, we would like to have all that in place prior to November of this year. So that is our attempt. Now, the latest possible scenario would be if we couldn't get paving because of some weather anomaly that delayed us, then it would be next spring. So it's not going to be a matter of years. Our interests are to have the phase 1 operating by March and April of 2020, in which case the path would also be fully constructed by that point as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions for clarity? No. See none, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the reassurance of the trail. That was one of the questions I had as well, and I think you'll be constructing the trail at the same time you're constructing the road. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next phase of a public hearing is all those that are in favor of the proposed bylaw change. They can step forward now. Okay. See none, we'll move on to the next phase, which is all those that are not in favor of the proposed bylaw change. They can step forward now. See none, we'll move on to the next phase, which is all those that have a general comment about this bylaw. Okay, see none, we'll move on back to the applicant. Do you have any closing comments? Thank you very much. Okay, with that, members of council, then the public hearing for 2614 DNP 19, then therefore is closed. So, okay, back to my agenda. Where is it? Okay, after public hearings is item 6. This is the adoption of council minutes, going on to RCM of June 24th and the GMP of July 2nd. Councilor Laurie, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that Town Council approve the Town Council meeting minutes as presented.
Okay, members of council, you had a chance to read through it. Any errors or omissions on those minutes? Comments?
Present, and she wasn't.
Okay, that is
Councillor
correct.
Bennett and
That is the July 2nd
July 2nd.
GMP.
Yes.
Councilor Bennett says that she watched it, but that does not count. Thank you, Councilor Matthews. Any other errors, omissions, or questions regarding those? Okay. So if that can be amended, please. Okay. With that, Councilor Laurie, thank you for your motion. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to council boards and commissions, etc. 7.1, 7.2 with GCC and the Stony Plain Library. Councilor Bennett, please.
I move the town council receive the council boards, commission, and committee minutes for information and place on file.
Okay. Thank you very much. Members of council, have you had a chance to read the minutes for the GCC and SPPL? Any questions and comments regarding those? Okay. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick comment in respect to the GCC. I was very happy to see our Stony Plain District Chamber of Commerce executive be able to be at the meeting and share their insights. I think it's incredibly important that we continue to work with our business community in all the avenues that we have. So I was very happy to see that they were welcomed into that meeting.
Okay. That's a good comment, and I believe later on in our business items when we talk about the X strategy, etc., the Stony Plain District and Chamber plays a big role in making sure that we accomplish those goals. Good. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that is carried. Moving on to and that's bylaws 8.1. This is the 2614/DMP 19 for the municipal reserve. And if I can have a motion, Councilor Pletchko, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council gives second reading to bylaw 2614/DNP/19 for the purpose of disposing and designating municipal reserve lands to facilitate a municipal reserve land swap between Plan 122-2965, Block 3, Lot 13 MR, and Plan 052-1452, Block 3, Lot 3.
Okay, thank you very much. Administration, any feedback, summaries?
Nothing more than was said at the public hearing.
Okay.
If you have any questions, please ask. Thank you.
Sure. So council, this opens up for debate and questioning. Any questions and comments regarding the proposed motion? Okay. I do have a question regarding the proposed motion. Actually, it's not really a question on the proposed bylaw. I think I'm in favor based on what I heard. But going back to the presentation regarding the design, let me see where it is. It's actually with the site design. Can you find that, please? Like, we have 466 pages to go through, and I didn't mark it. I just marked that I had a question regarding that. So. No, 68. A little further up. Here we are. Page 42 of 466. I'm sorry, members' council. I should have wrote it down. Page 42. So. That's not quite our page 42. That's what page past. Okay, there it is. Nope, that's not it either. Yes, right there. Okay, so I understand that we're swapping this land that we currently own as MR, and we're going to swap it, and this becomes MR. This becomes given to the developer, and the developer gives it back to us as road right away to complete this. This little L here says road. Does that get completed and transferred over to the town as a road right away at the same time as this phase 1 goes on, or is this left for a later time and to be given back to the town?
Your Worship, there's two parts to that. In terms of the legalities of owning this land, the whole area here would be dedicated to the town as road right-of-way during the first phase. However, if I go back here to a different image, right here, you'll notice this part of the road right-of-way is shown in the blue dotted line, indicating that the road structure, its surface, the road, the access road itself, would only be constructed from that point west and north when the subsequent phase 2 was to be built. The trail portion here would continue to be built in phase 1 as well as this area here. But in terms of the access road would terminate here and go north into. You can also see this within this here. So the green area here representing where, say, the fire truck would be able to go in phase 1, and that this is the area it would be able to go in phase 2, the red area.
Okay, so then for my clarity understanding, the road gets built up to here?
That is correct.
Right, but the pathway is completed here, so it's already shifted.
That is correct.
Okay. So then this one will be built as phase 2 comes on.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you. Councilor Pletchko?
Just going one step further, page 49 of 466, clarity for, I see you use a standard fire truck as the ins and outs of what's available for this. Have you consulted with the local fire chief to see whether this regular fire truck meets what we have within our community?
We haven't received any comment back. I do believe he's part of the internal circulation. And again, we did use the aerial fire truck, which is a 13.7 turning radius. So it's the largest fire truck that we do have. And that was the information that was provided to the applicant to conceive of this drawing here.
So ladder 3 is actually 47.6 feet long, 8.2 wide.
In terms of the turning radius, I believe the number is 13.7 for the turning radius, which again is one of the more important, like from a design factor, when in comprehensive site plans such as this, it's usually the turning radius that prevents the truck from going around the corners. So that's one of the reasons why that's used.
Thank you, Councilor Placzko. Any other questions or comments regarding this? Okay, seeing none. Again, this is second reading, and this is to have a land swap from MR to MR again. So we can go back to that page. Thank you. And that is, so members of council, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Moving on to third reading. Councilor Lloyd, please.
Yes, Your Worship, the Town Council give third reading to bylaw 2614/D&P/19.
Okay, thank you. Anything to add? Okay. Members of council, anything to add and comment? Okay, Councilor Meyer, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Don't we usually vote to do third reading and then do third reading?
No, it's only if we do all three readings in one sitting, then we have to have unanimous consent. Since we did first reading a couple of meetings ago, then therefore we don't have to have unanimous consent. Any other comments? No. Okay, I am in favor of definitely in the motion. This has been a difficult lot to service, and I'm glad that our staff was able to work with the purchase of the lot to make sure that there's access to the subdivision and provide services to our community. So thank you very much, administration staff, for your work. That'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. That is carried. Moving on to 8.2. This is land use amendment, Genesis Lake, 4.4B and 4C. Councilor Mattis, please.
Give first reading to bylaw 2615/LUO/19 to amend the land use district map and associated text of land use bylaw 2576/LUO/17 to redistrict a portion of Plan 132-3523, Block B, Lot 2 from R1 large lot detached dwelling residential district to R4 mixed form residential district, P1 Parks District and P3 Utility District, and 2, to authorize administration to proceed with newspaper advertising and notification of a public hearing to be held on August 19th, 2019 for bylaw 2615/LUO/19.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Mattis. And go ahead, administration, with the presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship. This one here is at the subdivision and zoning here. Let's get it on in the planning and framework in Stony Plain. It's located in the northwest corner of Genesis on the Lake neighborhood, bounded by Highway 628 to the north, which is known as 79th Avenue in town, as well as Highway 779 here. Just for context, there's the recent commercial on the corner here with Sorrentino's, and this is kind of just if you go in the neighborhood past the lake itself, there's a little playground on the corner here, so this is the land's kind of behind to the west of the playground. You can see that a little more in detail here. Sorry, zoom in a bit. So again, here's the Genesis commercial going down into the boulevard, crossing the major trail that bisects the area, going north, and then the playground I mentioned earlier is right here. So it's these lands here in the corner. The intention here would be to create a road right-of-way within here, so one little cul-de-sac and then sort of a loop through. One of the unique features of this as it's proposed is to have a gate provision here and here, the two areas that are indicated as P3. This here would effectively block off the public road right-of-way to only those that would be able to enter. If you can see here, it's somewhat difficult to see, but if this was to go through, we've already had the applicant take out a little section here for a roundabout, or I'm sorry, a turnaround at the end of Genesis Lane. And by doing so, they would have to dispose of a little bit of municipal reserve here, and they would provide some additional municipal reserve through here. There is plans for a walkway across here, as well as an access point to the north here to provide emergency servicing and possible servicing to the north when the lot to the north would develop. As part of this bylaw, one of the unique functions is that although there's the West Terra Estates, or sorry, Genesis on the Lakes area structure plan that covers most of Genesis on the Lakes, this one little area here is actually not covered by that, and it's covered by an older Deerfield area structure plan. I think if I can just flip through here. This is the plan here. As you can see, it's an older plan. Roughly put, you'll see here, the single-family residential is the white space, and the area that we're looking at on the map is approximately right here as a single-family area. Now, under the area structure plan, it does indicate that single-family means semi-detached or a detached dwelling unit. Thereby, this area here has been indicated because under the R4 district, you can do single detached, semi-detached, as well as row housing, that this area here would have a restriction in terms of using the row house dwelling type use. And again, this is just to make sure that the area structure plan that's above it is conformed at the zoning level. Again, this here is what was provided by the applicant to show the different areas. And then again, this would be kind of the subdivision. So again, the intention here is that they would be subdivided into either semi-detached or single-detached dwelling lots. If you look here, the existing matches the area down here, and what they're proposing is the R4, which is residential mixed form, which again, I believe it's the type of zoning here that hasn't been developed yet, but it's approximately the mix that you'd have in here. It's a little bit wider lot than your narrower lot ones, which is, say, if anyone's familiar with the, just to the west of the commercial, there are some dwellings in there that are row housing. The lots would be a little bit wider than those areas, just as a comparative. And some of the concerns addressed in the report itself around the legal implications of the gates have been summarized in the report, I think, thoroughly enough. With that said, if council has any questions or concerns, administration believes that this should go to a public hearing to allow discussion on this matter in an open forum, which is why we're recommending first reading and then the authorization to advertise the public hearing. Any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Some members of council, have you read the report and just heard the presentation by administration? If you have questions, comments, let's do that before we go to, okay, Councilor Fletchko.
If you could go back to page 104 of 466 on the Deerfield area structure plan. Just for clarification, on the west, so it would be west and south of 628. Do I understand that road to basically come out through that additional acres on the opposite side of where the proposed development is? Would that road connect into that development based on this Deerfield structure plan?
Through your worship to Councillor Pletchko, the difficulty I have in answering that is that this plan here underlies the entire 4 quarter sections here. The West Terra, or sorry, the Genesis and the Lakes area structure plan covers all of this other than the one area here.
Carry on.
If you notice here in the other one, let me just go back here. For example, this one here actually shows there being a municipal reserve land towards the south and towards the east of this. there is no concept of what road would access this at this level in the area structure plan for the Deerfield. I'm not sure if that addresses the question precisely, if you want to.
If we go to page 97 of 466, maybe that'll help a little bit. So it would be Lot 5, Block 1, Plan 102. So it's the top portion of, you go straight up. Yeah, just go, okay, so
This one here?
go straight up,
Yeah, right there.
right there. How does that, the way I read the Deer Park one, that would actually eliminate the road that would tie into that existing road. So that would kind of landlock that 12-acre parcel.
Okay.
So that's what I'm looking for clarification based on.
Okay, if I can talk to it this way, I guess. So right now, the intent is that this parcel here would probably be accessed mainly directly off here, or would come down here based on the genesis on the lake's area structure plan. So you're considering that if this here was built as proposed, it would landlock this parcel here?
Yes, that piece there. And the reason I say that is if you, through our plan that we have for the community, linking roads and trails, that would not be a linkable road. So there would be no, that would again be a segregated area similar to this that could become a community, gated community, because it's really, there's no other road that could come in and out of there. So you would have two separate parcels that would have no link to each other.
Through your worship to Council Prolachko, I guess the intent here of having this potential MR right here is to provide some sort of linkage into this area. Now it would be sort of an emergency access, maybe pedestrian connectivity, but no road. So I'm agreeing with you that there would be limited access between these from a vehicular standpoint. There's also the trail that exists, it currently ends about here. This land here, I believe, is owned by the town and provides another walking trail, potentially in the future, up to 79th Avenue or Highway 628.
But no
So-
vehicle.
No, the vehicular for this lot here, in some of the designs over the last 5 years that I've been with the town, would show it either being accessed off of this parcel here, or again, on the other map I was trying to show, basically the access to this parcel here is currently planned to come directly off of the highway here, or to come from this angle here. The balance of this site, as has been planned, also has a barrier here from vehicular access. So this site here is intended to be designed separate from the balance of Lake Westera, or sorry, Genesis on the lake.
Maybe just for clarification, do we have a area structure plan or design for the north parcel here?
Yes, we do. Just bear with me for 1 sec here.
How we get in the road?
Yeah. So that subdivision came before council quite a few years ago, and the access from that comes off 628 into that. So they've already been approved, they just haven't started building yet.
While we're waiting for for Miles to bring up a diagram, I guess the intention today was to consider first reading. If council so desires, there would be a public hearing scheduled for the next available council meeting, depending on council's purview. The developer would likely attend that public hearing and would be available to answer some of the specific questions and vision he might have for the various sections of land that we may that maybe enhance the answers you get tonight.
Okay, I'll wait till they do that, but I'll move on to Councillor Bennett and then we'll come back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when I was reading my package and I read this part, I'm acquainted with quite a few amendments to our land use. And so when I read this, I went, okay, yeah, they want to do from an R1 large lot to an R4 mixed residential. Yeah, that sounds pretty straightforward. So my question is, in what part of that recommendation does it talk about the gates? And And Mr. Mayor, the reason I'm asking this is because if we go to public hearing on this and our public is reading the same thing I'm reading, they're not going to see the real issue here, which is the gates that they want to build. And so they would probably be like me and say, oh, well, what's the big deal? They just want to redo that land use bylaw. So explain to me, Mr. Mayor or administration, where in that recommendation does that indicate that the developer wants to put gates in there?
Through your worship to Councillor Bennett, one of the challenges with this is that the subdivision application needs to have the appropriate zoning above it or in place. So in this case, the subdivision is what is actually considering the gates more specifically through the need of a public utility lot for the ownership of those gates as opposed to a road right-of-way. It's somewhat of a technicality. But because we need to have the public utility lots at the subdivision level, we need to have a zoning for utility district at the zoning level. Therefore, it does present that, and again, it's relevant for this discussion to talk about the gates because of that implication. So it's somewhat disconnected. It's complementary, I guess, in a sense, but it is a different issue, I guess, to talk about in this frame.
And I guess my question is, how will our public know that? How will they understand what's really happening here if this goes to public hearing with this kind of a recommendation?
Yes. Go ahead.
Your worship, just to supplement, so concurrently with this subdivision to be going to MPC where the public utility lots would be clearly outlined and as a need because of the gates. So the reason why this is here today is because obviously we want to make sure they're done in concert with each other, or council has decision-making authorities that it should decide these matters. So that is the I guess some of the confusion is that normally this gate would not require, or a public utility lot would be decided by MPC, but in this case, the zoning is coming because if council decides on that, then a subdivision would follow.
Okay, so I guess for the understanding of clarity for the average resident, if we go to, if council passes first reading and then there's a public hearing and the public doesn't understand what the public hearing is for. So I guess the question is, if this does get approved, then we as a council, are we allowing gates on a public road? I think that's the question that council.
Well, and I guess maybe a simpler way to say it, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, is what happens if we don't pass this at this point? It doesn't go to public hearing, it doesn't get changed, and our public, and to me, that's cut and dried.
Your worship, maybe if I can provide a few comments and maybe and if there's any follow-up to, I can try to answer those as well. So what I believe Council Bennett is inquiring about or asking about would be in what manner does the public get some clarification as to what those PUL lots are being created for, because as I believe the report indicates, and I believe part of the question was that the gating of a public road is a key question to this discussion and debate of council. So we have a couple of different ways we can do that. And again, not to make light of it, but sometimes the way we post our planning changes are not necessarily the easiest to read to the general public. We do have other ways. I know I had had some discussion with our communication staff this morning. We weren't intending to put out any communication on this particular one this evening. We were going to see what happens and have some discussion and send something out tomorrow that would perhaps be a little clearer as to why we're considering those PUL lots, i.e. There's a request to have a gate on what would ultimately be publicly owned property. And Your Worship, if I can just leave it on that note, we could take extra steps to ensure the public is made perhaps more aware than on a straightforward zoning change as you may have seen in the past. So we can take that under advisement and do that should council see fit to pass first reading. Your Worship, and maybe a little bit further on that, again, first reading is here tonight and is being recommended because I guess a simple way to put it, the applicant would like this to be considered by council and potentially by the community, so to speak, or whatever. It's a policy debate that we certainly couldn't resolve at the administrative level and frankly needed council direction and input on. So to further frame it for council, again, as you're well aware, defeating of first reading ends the conversation, so to speak. We're recommending first reading to continue the conversation about how this could be achieved or frankly may not be able to be achieved. But we're not looking for the opportunity to have further conversation with the applicant and the developer. So, Your Worship, I'll leave it at that. That's part of the rationale for why it's being recommended for first reading, even though it's a debate that council should and will have. And on the communication side, I think on this particular one, it behooves both members of council and administration to provide what I would consider to be maybe a bit more of a layman's perspective on explanation as to some of the considerations on this particular application. I'll leave it at that, Your Worship. Certainly can answer any other questions.
Okay. Thank you. So for Councillor Bennett, if you turn to page 81, I don't know if, how we can get that out to the public more. I think that's what you're trying to ask is that paragraph says, this registration application is required for associated subdivision application that proposes controlled gates to restrict access to a subdivision. So I think that's what you're asking is like, how do we get the public to understand that's what this is? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Councillor Matties?
I would like to be able to pass this. I would support passing it because I'd like to be able to understand the opportunity and understand fully the issues associated with it. There are members of our community who've asked for this, and so I think it would be, in my opinion, I'd like to have a fuller understanding of it.
Thank you. And back to administration, if you can pull back the slide to answer Councillor Plechko's motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to Councillor Plechko. So this here is the Genesis on the Lakes Area Structure Plan amendments. It actually brought in this area here to the plan. So as you can see, the plan is still absent of this area, which is why we are relying on the older Deerfield Area Structure Plan. If you'll note up here, it actually shows a little lip here to provide access into this lot. And having talked to this applicant here at some point in the past 5 years, I know that if this here was created as a road potentially on the edge here, they might have a second access off here. You can see back in the day, there was no attempting to actually contact or to provide connection through here directly via road. Based on the plans that I've shown you today, that has changed since this was done. I believe this is about 2009, 2010 era. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lowry?
Thank you, Your Worship. Reading through the background information and going through the mapping and everything that's on here, there's just a question of clarity that I'm looking for in respect to the rezoning into the P3 utility district. It talks about the applicant proposed a homeowners association with a license of occupancy that could own and operate the gates, which would be set to open automatically during certain hours. And then we talk about going to a Bearland condominium with private roads, etc. Ultimately, though, my question in respect to the P3 is, even if the homeowners association owns and operates the gates, who does the ultimate liability for those gates fall on? Does that fall on the town? If there was a situation where somebody was either injured by the gates, it delayed resident receiving medical services or emergency services, whose liability would that be? Would that be the homeowners association as the owner of the gate, or the town's, being that it's town land?
Your Worship, I can provide some comment on that. I don't know if I would call it definitive at this point. I know there's some legal opinions provided within the reports. But yeah, that's part of the research and review that I believe needs to be completed prior to any final approvals of a potential gate on publicly owned lands. Potential liability is there. You know, you can mitigate, you can defer, you can do a lot of things, but I would believe it would still exist to one way, shape, or form. And I don't think we can give you a clear answer or one that I would be confident at this point in time that I guess I would be confident providing at this point in time.
Okay. So that was a good question, Councillor Laurie. So can we get clarity on that? Because if this passes first reading, goes to public hearing, second and third, et cetera, if we don't have an understanding of who's liable, then I don't think we're doing our job as members of council to make sure that everything is looked after.
Yeah, Your Worship, that would certainly be part of it. Again, we've already had some input from legal counsel as to the broad stroke and what the implications could be, and we can certainly get something more detailed and definitive. Again, anytime when it comes to risk or liability, it's you can be sued for a number of things. It's just a matter of how much diligence you put into it, how much work you put into it, how much effort you put into mitigating the risks, and so on and so forth. So there's some broad answers, and we need to have more specific answers, both for your consideration as well as any sort of, certainly on the administrative side of it too. So those are some of the answers we'll look for, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor, go ahead. Follow.
And just two other quick follow-ups to that. We see in there that there was also some walking trail connections proposed. Are there gates proposed on the, secured gates proposed on the walking trails?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Laurie, my understanding is that the walking trails would be gated in some form or fashion as well.
So would that not need to be a P3?
In this case, the underlying use is as a walkway, so it would be P1, which is a municipal or a parks designation.
Okay. And then as the last follow-up, as we go through and we look at the information that was pulled out of the MDP, it talks a lot about how maintaining a gate on this property or on this piece of land would contravene some of the things we have listed in our MDP. But in 6.5.H, and it can be referred to on page 82 of the package, 6.5.H, item IV, number 4, promoting design of facilities accessible for all by considering age-friendly design, design for people with disabilities, and consideration of safety and crime protection through environmental design, or SEPTED principles. So does gating a community fall underneath SEPTED principles?
Your Worship, I'm not sure if staff can answer that at this point in time.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Laurie, my basic understanding of SEPTED is that you're trying to design an area to be safe, so the concept of actually blocking it off, I think somewhat contradicts that on a philosophical basis. But ultimately, if you're restricting an area because it's unsafe, it might follow that. So it's a little bit of duality.
Thank you. Councillor Belchko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I know at times we have difficult things that come to council for decisions. If this does not pass, I understand that this would basically shut this completely down. If it does pass, I can hear a lot of questions being asked at this table today that really have no answers. So how do we get the answers before we take it to first reading without completely shutting it down? Or does it have to go to first reading so we can get the answers, so we have a good understanding of what it is and then make a good decision at that time?
Your Worship, for clarity too, I want to be clear that, it was my call to put it to first reading. The reason I wanted it to go to first reading was to get the process going officially, certainly be able to get those questions out and allow us to know what was somewhat on council's mind that we would need to work on, both frankly, administratively on our end, and potentially with our applicant developer in this particular area. So to answer the first question though, I guess, so should council want to have those answers prior to passing first reading, I guess maybe a motion to table and then, or refer, or whatever you want to call that, and then we would, endeavor to provide these answers, or the research, answer the questions, so on and so forth, bring that back at the next time with a recommendation for first reading. I believe that would be the answer to the first question. Having said that, Your Worship, again, the reason I wanted it to come to first reading was to get this conversation into the open. Administratively, we've gone as far as we can with the developer. There is an important public policy question here to be discussed, debated, and for right, wrong, or otherwise, Your Worship, this was the chosen method to get this both into the chambers and into the public. And at the same time, to ensure a timely decision process for our applicant, because as council's aware, on any given time, the speed and the time of which we move through some of these processes is important to the development industry. So I thought to respect that too, that we would bring it here as first reading. So I'm not sure if that clarifies the question, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Good. Councillor Lloyd, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And I just want to stay on page 82 of 466 here. And before I make my comments, I truly believe that all of us on this council want to see development. It's been an issue that's been brought to all of our attention over the last couple of years, and we have a developer and a local developer that's trying to get this done, which is good. But I am a little concerned, and it's been shared by some of my colleagues here. There are some issues there that we're not clear on. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, Your Worship, on page 82, but it's basically the paragraph that starts, the municipal government stipulates, and it says that do not have the power to exclude pedestrians or vehicles generally for using highways. And the paragraph right under that says any attempt of the town to restrict lawful use by all persons of a public road for the benefit of a private individual will be disregarded if legally challenged. I don't want to set this project up for failure. I do not want to see us go through all this hard work to get something done when maybe we know that it just can't succeed. So I'm asking Your Worship that when administration is bringing this to us for, because I believe it's got to go, as the general manager said, for first reading, but when it comes back to second, that's when I think the real tough questions, the hard questions are going to be asked, and it cannot be, well, we don't know, we're not sure, maybe if. I don't think our developer wants to spend that type of money in that thing to proceed down that rabbit hole with the potential of it just backfiring in everybody's face. So that would be my things. As Councillor Laurie said, he brought up the thing about security. Those are all issues when we refer to page 82 and several other pages in this document that are going to be questioned extensively with concrete answers.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your comments. Councillor Matthews, please.
My comment is with regards to going through first reading, it would give us the ability to really, first of all, fully understand all the issues. And then secondly, once we understand the full issues, then maybe there's other options for if this does not work, so if gated community is not acceptable in this community, that maybe there are other options, but at least that will allow us to get through the process. So I do believe that we should pass, or I support passing for first reading.
Councillor Bennett.
Yeah, if this developer, who personally I respect a great deal, I think he's done great things for our town. If what he wanted to do was change the development, the land use bylaws from an R1 to an R4 because of markability, because of the economy, I would fully support this. But We have in our package our MDP, which says that this is not according to our MDP. We want communities that connect, not communities that start with a gate and end with a gate. It goes against our legal opinion, which was in our package. To me, that legal opinion was pretty clear that this is not something that municipalities should be doing. There are other options. If this developer wanted this to be a condominium and have it be a private road, he could do that. My opinion is, why are we allowing it to go to public hearing and talk about it some more when, as I said, in my package, it was pretty clear to me that this is not going to be something that's going to stand up to liability issues, to our own MDP, to legal opinions. I think that we should just stop it right here and not have first reading, not let it go to public opinion, public hearing, and then other options will come forward. But to me, it's a waste of our time and our public's time.
Okay.
I will be voting against first reading.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Question.
Okay, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to administration, I'm curious if the developer gave you any insight into why they have rejected, or at least initially rejected, the condominium option.
It said in there.
Too expensive.
Package why
Okay.
you did.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Just a question for administration. I've been in the community for many, many years, and for every subdivision that we have in our community, and even condo associations, we only have one community that is gated. Can administration tell me if that's a gated to community onto a public road or to a private road?
Your Worship, if we're talking about off of Fairways Drive, the gated, it is a condominium that has a private road that goes through it. So the gated portion is only on a private common property.
Okay.
So the road itself.
So with that, then, as mentioned by members of council earlier, if somebody has a problem with the gate and somebody doesn't get serviced or something happens in terms of fire and somebody runs into the gate, who is liable?
To the best of my understanding, the liability, Your Worship, would be on the condominium association themselves.
Okay. Do we have any communities in our tri-municipal area that has a gate on a public road?
Your Worship, I can speak to that. So there is one community that I know of, Sturgeon County. They had the same situation you see in front of you today, and they proceeded with the gated community.
Okay, members of council, let us put this to rest. Okay, so this is, again, for first reading. First reading does not mean that everything is passed. It means it opens up the discussion for a public hearing, which then members of our community can speak to it. The developer will be here to address questions and comments that we may have. So you have two choices here. Either, yes, we can get more information on this and vote for first reading, or based on the information that you have is enough, you can vote against first reading. And if that happens, then this is done. I guess the administration will try to work with the developer to find another resolution to this. And if we go to second reading for the public hearing, then we can actually try to work on some other options as well at the same time, if that's kind of acceptable for members of council. I don't think, in my history of being on town council, I think we've only voted down one first reading. So I will be supporting first reading this time because I believe everybody should get the chance to speak and talk about it. We have other options of not passing second reading. We're asking for more information in second reading, or even passing second reading and not passing third reading if we don't like it as well. So there's other options available later on. Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor of first reading? Okay, opposed? Okay, that is carried. So which means the public hearing will be on August 19th, 2019 when we get back. Again, administration, you heard a lot of concerns and comments from members of council and a lot of questions that were not answered. if those can be marked down and ready to be answered when we come back for public hearing.
Correct, Your Worship, and without getting further down that trail necessarily, I will take comments about informing the public as best as possible seriously, and we'll see that we can get some clear communication out there about what the challenge may or may not be on this particular application.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Council, moving on to business items 8.3, Land Use Bylaw 2616 LUO/19. And now we're at, yes. Councilor Lori, please.
I'll move the town council give first reading to bylaw 2616/LUO/19 to amend the land use district map of land use bylaw 2576/LUO/17 to redistrict portions of northwest quarter section 25-52-1- west of the 5th meridian from R2 detached dwelling residential district and P1 Parks District to P1 Parks District and P2 Community Service District. And that authorizes administration to proceed with newspaper advertising and notification of a public hearing to be held on August 19th, 2019 for bylaw 2616/LUO/19.
Thank you very much. Administration, go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application here is to facilitate the servicing and development of the new Stony Plain Central School. In terms of its location, it's located just to the west of the area of the current Stony Plain Central School. The arena, the storm, or many of the recreational facilities the town has are here, and the Brickyard area, the Brickyard neighborhood is just to the north of the area, with Heritage Estates just being to the south. You can see a little bit better on this map here. So ultimately, the intention here is that Brickyard Drive, which currently ends at the field here, would be continued south and veer from the town property into the Old Town Development Corporation's lands here. Go down, there would be a roundabout approximately here, where the future extension of 57th Avenue would continue through a portion of the Old Town Development Corporation's land and through the town land into here. It would ultimately rezone, the intent here is that this area here, you can see as R2, would be redistricted to a P1, which is a Parks District up here, and then down here it would be to a P2, which is a Community Services District, and that this portion here of the town-owned land that's currently a P1 for parks would be redistricted to a P2, which allows for the school use. You can see a little better here the existing districting being the green area being P1. You can see some adjacent P2 over here where there's already the former high school site and the current Stony Plain Central, and then this little strip here representing the R2 district, which is residential detached dwellings. This here is for discussion purposes. So you can see Glen Hall Arena. This is the outdoor pool, spray park, the curling rink, the baseball diamonds are across here, the running track. So it's basically the land just to the west of those. If council has any additional questions, just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Members of council, any questions of clarity and understanding for the proposed bylaw change? Councilor Lori?
Thank you, Your Worship. Fully support the changes that are proposed here. The question that I have is actually in respect to the second part of the recommendation. I'm just wondering, given that time is of the essence on this school, we want things to move forward, we want this project to continue to push forward. I'm just curious as to what the requirement for time between advertising and our public hearing would be. We're only on the 8th of July currently, and we're looking at this not coming back for public hearing until the 19th of August. I'm wondering if there would be an option for us to consider this at a special council meeting sooner than that date in order to move this forward.
Okay, thank you. That's actually a good question. So since we're working with the school division for the development of the new Stony Plain Central, does these timelines match their timelines to get everything done?
Your Worship, these timelines do match their timelines. The requirement for advertising is two weeks advertising.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett, you have your hand up.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I just, the sliver of land that's right there, what is that going to be?
That's currently owned by the town of Stony Plain, and it is P1 right now. It's green.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Any other questions and comments? No. Okay, sounds good. I don't have any questions about this. I believe that this is the process that we've been working with Parkland School Division for well over a year now. I'm glad to see this come forward as council has made the appropriate decisions over the past few months to make sure that we get here. So I look forward to the public hearing. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. That is passed. Moving on to 8.4, and it's the emergency management bylaw. Councillor Bennett, please.
The council provides first reading to bylaw 2617 /PS/19 emergency management bylaw.
Thank you. Go ahead, administration.
Your Worship, excuse me, members of council. So this evening we're putting forward a new bylaw, emergency management bylaw. A couple reasons why the bylaw is coming before council this evening is in 2015 we created a brand new bylaw. Since then, the provincial government has made some changes to the local emergency management regulations, which come in effect in 2020. So our bylaw didn't match exactly what they required within those procedures. So in lieu of that, and to get in advance of that, otherwise we would be back here, we'd have to table a report at the end of the month, end of the year. We thought it would be more prudent to do it in coordination with our annual emergency management update and to update our bylaw. So the bylaw, basically, we've provided a one-pager which indicates what we've changed from the 2015 bylaw to this bylaw. The majority of the updates have been some formatting, some of the word or phrases used by the provincial government, sort of a municipal emergency management plan. It's emergency management plan. So I've dropped a municipal component to that. They've requested that council has additional responsibilities that we didn't have included in the first. And the reason why they're asking for additional responsibilities is to ensure that communities across Alberta have more diligence with respect to emergency management plans, because under the legislation, all of us have to have a plan which is audited annually by the provincial government. Some jurisdictions don't or don't have the capacity, so the new changes permit them to partner with neighboring communities and have the right agreements in place so that the emergency management plan can be covered. As an example, Parkland County's plan could cover some smaller communities if that relationship was built with those communities. So basically, we summarized the highlights on a one-page summary sheet before the new bylaw. And essentially, there's minor changes to the bylaw, and some of the stuff that we're legislated to do is included there, and they're very minor changes. So the 2015 bylaw was actually pretty robust with respect to the changes that we're presenting to you this evening.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. So members of council and to the gallery that's following along, it's page 142 of 466. That just has the highlights of the changes. And then the subsequent bylaw, all the changes are highlighted in yellow for ease of read. Okay, members of council, any questions and comments regarding first reading against the proposed changes to the emergency management bylaw? Oh, see none? Oh, Councilor Meyer?
Sorry, this is more like more personal information, rather. But thank you for, through you to administration. I'm referencing page 148, item point number 3.26.7. While I was reading that, authorize entry into building of any land without warrant by any person in the course of implementing an emergency plan or program. Now I forget the community exactly, but I do recall an issue with RCMP members entering and then confiscating weapons that were lying about and all the rest of that. I'm curious if in this bylaw anything has been done to address basically the concerns of entry and what happens to personal property in an emergency situation. Yes.
Your Worship, through the Deputy Mayor. So there's a couple issues there, and you're talking about the High River floods where the RCMP went in and took firearms out of people's homes. Under that state of emergency, a decision was made by the governing authority at that time, and they deemed that that was a threat. So they did what they believed was the correct action. And under that specific circumstance, they have the authority to do so. Another example of that is the Slave Lake fires. We dug everyone's basement out and didn't give them the opportunity to sift through and potentially get personal items from their basement. The potential of the personal items being there was minor, but the RCMP did go through and sift through all of the rubble, and anything that was of value they put on the property. So again, the EOC of the day, or the body that was determining what actions needed to be taken place to safeguard the community, to allow people to get back into the community and the region, and to eliminate the hazard that was caused by the disaster, made those decisions, and they have the authority to do so. This bylaw would not reference that. So there would be, under the local state of emergency, certain things come into play. Councils get to make a decision. The EOC or the governing body that's managing the emergency get to make decisions. So this bylaw would not necessarily govern how those folks would make their decision. It basically says, this is the structure by which we will manage emergencies. The decisions that are made aren't really governed with this particular document. As long as we follow the process, we set up the EOC, the right titles and the right people are in the room. It does reference partners that come in from time to time, depending on the emergency. But that being said, every emergency is completely different. The circumstances with an emergency are completely different, and some of the decisions made in Slave Lake, High River, Fort McMurray, High Level this year might not be made in a similar circumstance, just because those things don't exist.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Nope. So, okay, thank you very much for the update, and we'll call the question for first reading. All in favor? That's carried. Moving on to second reading. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council gives second reading to bylaw 2617/PS/19.
Any more questions regarding the emergency bylaw? Okay, call the question. All in favor? Okay. Councilor Pletchko, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The council gives unanimous consent to consider third reading of bylaw 261/PS/19.
Thank you. So again, for members of the audience and those that are watching at home, if council does all three readings in one sitting, there has to be unanimous consent to consider third reading. So I'll call the question. All in favor of third reading? Okay. That is carried. Councilor Lloyd, please.
Yes, Your Worship. The council provides third reading to bylaw 2617/PS19.
Okay. Last comments from administration? No. Members of council? Okay, so members, so thank you on behalf of our community to administration for updating our bylaws so it is relevant and consistent with what is happening today. So thank you for that. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. And that is carried. Okay, before we move on to business items, 9.1, we're going to call an 8-minute recess and then we'll be back. 8 minutes. 10 seconds. Yes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, council, we're back to council meeting and moving on to our business items. And again, just to refresh everybody's memory, we added 9.1, which is the RCMP SRO. So that is the first thing that we'll deal with right now. If I can have a motion, please. Councillor Matties.
That Town Council authorize additional funding in 2019 for a RCMP school resource officer as required due to Parkland County funding withdrawal.
Okay. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you. Your worship, members of council. So with some budget discussions that Parkland County has been having related to the coal transition that the provincial government has put in place, they've made some changes and alterations to their corporate plan and their funding models and levels. And unfortunately, the student resource officer, of which Parkland County, City of Spruce Grove, Town of Stony Plain, and Parkland School Division shared, they've withdrawn their funding. So basically that impacts the position in terms of eliminating about $10,000 worth of costs in 2019 with respect to that position continuing. And the City of Spruce Grove and the Town of Stony Plain have had some discussions about covering that and ensuring that that position remains viable and critical to the school system. In addition to that, we will do a new agreement with the three remaining funders, which are ourselves, Parkland School Division, and City of Spruce Grove, with respect to ensuring that this position is maintained through the 2020 corporate plan year also, as the school year starts in 2019 September and it continues through to June 2020. So we'd like to ensure that the sustainable funding is there, and council will have that opportunity to deliberate on that additional cost during our corporate plan process in November, as it'll be identified as an increase to that particular line item.
Okay, thank you very much. Members of council, at the presentation, I'll open the floor up for commentary and comments, please. Councilor Matties.
I do have one comment, and it's with regards to just the importance of this role in our community, and wanting to ensure that we understand how important it is that we have an officer in our schools, so that our students are able to just become familiar with that role, and basically just establish a relationship that allows them to have a positive relationship as they grow into adulthood. So I think it's very, very important that we support this role in the school system.
Thank you. Councilor Pletchko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just a bit of a comment and maybe some clarification if anybody can answer the question. I'm just wondering why we continue to have our regional partner continue to pull out of community things that are very important to this community and have been for years. They continue to expect us as councils to pick up on what they no longer want to fund. And I'm just wondering if that is how that conversation can be had with our regional partners to seek importance of certain projects that continue to run array on their part. I just have a hard time understanding why Spruce Grove and Stony Plain continue to need to pick up on their shortfalls.
That's a comment, but any commentary from administration?
Your Worship, I'll defer to the town manager with respect to the relationship component, but with respect to this position specifically, we deem that this position holistically is a benefit to all children, regardless of where their parents live. There's an opportunity for us to grow better students through this particular position. And as Councillor Matties indicated earlier, the relationships that are built, the trust that the students get with respect to enforcement services, this position, the rate of return of this position in the school is something that we just can't, the value is way higher than the cost that we incur for this particular position. So I think the City of Spruce Grove and the Town of Stony Plain are looking at this from the perspective, and Parkland School Division, that it's a critical piece of infrastructure that needs to be maintained regardless of where the funding comes from. It is unfortunate that a partner decided to leave they have their own reasons for discontinuing, just as our council has the opportunity to make that same decision on any particular topic that we fund from time to time. So I think the value of the position is what we're bringing to the table this evening. And it just requires additional funding on our part to ensure that this is sustainable and maintained within the community.
Just a little bit of a follow-up. I would concur with you. I think this is a very valuable piece of how do I say it? It's very valuable service to our community and to our schools. I don't think that cutting funding at this time in this economy makes sense when we need to educate our students on the future. So unless somebody has a lot of different opinion today, I would be in full support of this today.
Your Worship, and if I may respond to, I believe, the earlier part of Councillor Plechko's question, in regards to the relationship and some of the funding changes and decisions made by Parkland County, and certainly, decisions made in the chambers of Parkland County are theirs to make, and in many ways theirs alone to make, and we have to respect that to a degree. Part of the relationship challenge or opportunity in such an interrelated municipal area that we operate in is that decisions made in other chambers do have direct effects on each other, on ourselves at Spruce Grove, and in this particular instance, direct monetary effect. Draw council's attention to the communication side of the lead sheet. It does indicate that we would be formally alerting our partners should council see fit to continue the funding as requested tonight. Certainly, the concern and the challenge and perhaps dismay by this decision by Parkland County can be made clear under signature of the mayor and on behalf of council that although this council believes strongly in this program and wishes to see it continue, that there's a definite amount of concern that we've seen a few of these decisions from Parkland County over the past 6 to 12 months, respecting and understanding their challenges, but also understanding that these are just putting further challenges on their partners. And I think we can make that clear via letter to Parkland County, and for now, at this point anyways, that's one method of communicating our relationship concern on this matter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Laurie?
For me.
Councillor Bennett then? That looked.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to add my 2 cents worth. We can't control what our neighbors do, and they have to look at their budgets and their values the same way that we do. And this is something that's very important to us, and so that is why we will continue to support and even over-contribute for this position. We have seen the results of it. We've heard the stories. We know kids that go to the high school and what they think of these school resource officers. And so we have to stick to our guns, stick to our values, and vote for things the way that we see them.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. To echo my colleague's comments, and there's a specific word that was used there, and it's over-contribute. We also over-contribute to another very valuable organization within our municipality in FCSS. And I think that in Stony Plain, we hold a huge value as to resources within our community, and especially from the social aspect of our community, because we cannot measure what the cost would be if we did not have those resources in place. But it's proven time over time over time that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Having positions like school resource officers, having amenities like FCSS within our community are worth over-contributing to. Decisions being made should not be made based on the amount of dollars we receive back by the dollars spent. Under no circumstances. Decisions should be made on our community values. They should be made on the greater good and the benefit for all. So although we have neighbors who are facing struggles and have made some tough decisions, whether we support those decisions or not, we have the opportunity to make the right decision this evening. Our partners in Spruce Grove, I believe, will have the opportunity to make this right decision shortly as well, and I have full confidence that they will be making that as well. So I will certainly be supporting this. I think it's a shame when we see our RCMP, who are already struggling for funding, who are already struggling to fill positions, and who are already struggling to make sure our communities are well protected, being put into even more difficult situations by losing one and a portion of an officer in our region lately. So I will be standing very strongly against this and supporting it.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of council would like to have the comment? Councilor Matties?
I'd just like to make one comment and then just to amend my motion. So first of all, one thing I would like to know, or like to share, is that even though that we're accepting this additional responsibility, it means that we have to cut back somewhere else as well, because we only have a certain budget in our community to fund our operations as well. So I wanted to make that clear, but I 100% support this program in the schools. And with that, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion, which is that council authorize additional funding for the 2019-2020 for RCMP school resource officer as required due to Parkland County funding withdrawal.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Matties. Again, that's just for clarification for our staff and for our residents as well, that it is authorizing additional funding for the 2019-2020 school resource officer, because it is for the full school year. And then after that, then that funding is gone. The Parkland County needs to decide what they're doing. Okay, so that's changed, and it is your motion, so you don't have to do anything. You can just change it. Okay, any other comments, questions? So, you know what? I thought about this quite a bit as soon as the Parkland County announced that they were not fund the the school resource officer. And that leaves me to question and think about how that officer has affected our lives and in my family. Definitely there was a school resource officer when I was in high school, and I truly believe that that individual made differences to the students at that time. My 20-year-old that graduated from Memorial had the privilege of working with Constable Pat. Again, when I was at the ceremonies for graduation, she received the loudest and warmest applause from all the attendees. Why? Because they have built that relationship with the students. That relationship cannot be measured. Right? And again, this last year I attended my second oldest child's graduation from Spruce Grove Comp. And again, Constable Gord was there in attendance, and he too received the loudest and warmest ovation. Again, signifying that this resource officer is invaluable to the school system. The community that he builds within those school systems, the ounce of prevention, as Councilor Lori said, is worth thousands and thousands of dollars, immeasurable dollars in the future. And it's very sad that Parkland County has dropped that funding, but I'm glad that this council is ready to look at it today. Is it fair? No, it's not. But is it the right thing to do? Yes, it is. So I'll be supporting the motion at hand. Thank you for your motion, Councilor Matties, and the amendment to that. So I will call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to 9.2. Councilor Lori, please. Councilor Lori?
Wasn't sure if you said lawyer, Lori.
Sorry, Councilor Lori.
The council accepts the Economic Development Strategic Plan update for information.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, administration.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship, and to all of council for the opportunity to speak this evening. A summary of the actions and efforts achieved as a result of the Economic Development Strategic Plan have been provided to you. There are a couple key items that I would like to speak to tonight, which are the Labor Market Strategy and Action Plan, support for the downtown business community during Phase 3 of the redevelopment, and Bill 7, the Municipal Government Property Tax Incentives Amendment Act. The labor markets study provided an in-depth understanding of the tri-municipal region labor force, identified labor market gaps and issues, and highlighted labor market assets. The resulting labor market strategy and action plan delivers a way forward for the tri-region to guide regional stakeholders in addressing gaps and issues and capitalizing on opportunities that exist. The Labor Market Strategy and Action Plan provides strategies and actions that address objectives that emerged from the study. Currently, the tri-municipal partners are finalizing the terms of reference and establishing the committee going forward to implement the strategy and action plan. The town is doing their best to support the downtown businesses during the redevelopment. We have been working closely with the business owners to collaborate on marketing initiatives to stimulate customer traffic during the inconvenience of construction in an effort to retain these businesses and keep them as part of our unique and vibrant downtown. Unfortunately, the redevelopment of Main Street is necessary to replace expiring underground infrastructure, but the town is taking every consideration to address the needs of the businesses. A couple of initiatives that have come out of a brainstorming session held with the downtown business owners, one being a coupon book which contains many deals offered by the businesses. You'll see them distributed at the town office, Chamber of Commerce, businesses, hotels, town facilities, and handed out at events such as Farmers Days and Blueberry Bluegrass Festival. The intention is to not only incentivize customers to shop downtown during construction, but also benefit from when people are here visiting. Another initiative being pursued is large signage to grab the attention of highway traffic on 16A. These signs have been recently erected out near the eastern and western boundaries. The intention of these signs is to get the message out to shop locally and experience our historic downtown. We are exploring all measures to ensure the businesses have an opportunity to flourish in our town and that our visitors have an exceptional experience. As you are most likely aware, the Conservative government recently introduced Bill 7, the Municipal Government Properties Tax Incentives Amendment Act, which came into effect on June 28th. Bill 7 gives the municipalities a broad mandate to grant tax incentives for up to 15 years in an effort to attract business. I will be preparing a report for the Growth and Commerce Committee with potential impacts and my recommendations going forward on August 27th. And I would be happy to take questions at this time.
Okay. Thank you for your update. Members of the council, any questions regarding the report that was written and the presentation that was just provided for us? 9.3, 9.2. Okay. Members of the council, any questions? Okay. Seeing none, maybe I have a question regarding Bill 7. So in your dealings with other economic development officers in the Edmonton metro region, what is the consensus regarding the positive or negativity of Bill 7?
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. From my brief conversations that I've had to this point, a lot of them are afraid to stray from regional partners or regional municipalities on this, as they would see kind of a race to the bottom and creating an unequal playing field in that sense. That can be looked at as probably positive or negative, but a lot of them are a little hesitant to be the leader in that. So I think they're kind of waiting to see how the dust settles. There's not a lot of examples to go on because I think there's only 2 other provinces in Canada that have it implemented at the moment. So I think they're looking to study case studies on it as well before moving forward with anything.
Your Worship, maybe add just briefly to that specific question too. Late last week, excuse me, I was in an EMRB CAO meeting. The topic came up, briefly discussed. It did not sound that anybody at the table was looking to rush out and get to work on creating a bunch of tax incentives. Unscientific poll, Your Worship. That just seemed to be the flavor in the room.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Matthews?
To administration. My question is with regards to the labor market study and our wages out here with regards to laborers and public works, maintenance, equipment operators, welders, etc. They're all between 17 and 42% higher than the Edmonton area. And then we also have at the other end individuals that are 45 to 69% lower in wages for tech specialists, electronic service techs, and insulators. What would be the reason for that extreme? Is it the data, or are we getting the full picture, I guess?
Sure. Your Worship, to Councillor Matties, we're still digesting a lot of the information to understand it. The consultants have done a fairly good job of informing us or dissecting the document to make a better understanding for us. But we're still trying to digest all the information to get some understanding around those things, which will also help shape some of the strategy and action going forward. So I can't really speak too much further to it. I mean, I hope that's kind of enough for now, but I mean, I'm more than willing to look into more detail and I can present it back to the GCC or however need be.
It would be nice to know. And if we need to change the survey so that we're covering more positions to get a better it's a bit better information because that's quite a significant range of wages.
Any other questions? Okay. I just have one comment before I call the question. Again, with the Tri-Municipal Region Labor Market Strategy and Action Plan, again, it's a partnership between the three municipalities of Stony Plain, Parkland, and Spruce Grove, along with some provincial funding. What I don't see here was the involvement of the chamber. So I do hope that the chamber is fully aware and is supplied with copies of this so that they can help their membership. Because I don't believe us as a municipality, our job is to do the labor stuff and make sure people come into. It's actually the business association and the chamber. So
Sure.
if I can make sure that gets forwarded to them.
Sure. Your worship, just a comment to that. The chamber has both Spruce and Stony have been at the table for all of our consultants and meetings.
Okay. And so, but they weren't listed as a partner?
Yeah, so because the funding was coming from the municipality, they're looking at, like, I guess the way it's written is the tri-municipal funding partners, but we have federal government as well as Norquest College, and both chambers have been at the table for all conversations, as well as Atchison Business Association.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Mattis?
Oh, Your Worship, I just have one more question. It's with regards to the profile of survey respondents. It's on page 263 of 465. And it's regarding public administration, which the definition of that would be government. And it says that in Parkland County, there's one employer over 200. In Spruce Grove, there's two employers over 200 plus employees. And in Stony Plain, there's two that are over 200. Who are they?
What's that, sorry? Your worship, to Councillor Matthews, you'd be looking at government, I believe, Government Alberta.
Okay, so it says in Stony Plain, there's two employers that employ more than 200 people. That's what it says. Who would they
Stony
be?
Plain, Your Worship, I believe that would probably be Westview, our AHS, and Parkland School Division. I
Okay,
believe would be the
so
ones.
that would be, okay, so that would be considered, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Moving on to 9.3. Councillor Bennett, please.
Adopt the Economic Development Strategic Plan 2019 as presented.
Go ahead again, administration. Perfect.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to all of Council. Council adopted the Economic Development Strategic Plan in 2016. The plan has provided a focused path to guide Stony Plain to further prosperity and outlines the town's commitment to economic development. As an initiative of administration and the Growth and Commerce Committee, a strategic planning session was held to review the Economic Development Strategic Plan and action items to ensure it is relevant to consider current and potential future economic times. To highlight a couple of the new initiatives, there is a focus around promotion of the community to attract housing and also partnering with builder and developer industry in marketing initiatives. The outcomes of the session have been provided for your reference. Administration and the Growth and Commerce Committee recommend implementing the attached updates to the Economic Development Strategic Plan. I'd be happy to take questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for the work of, you said the Growth and Commerce Committee as well. So well done, ladies and gentlemen. I'll start over there. Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question in regards to the report. It references in it several times different census data. Being that this evening we're hopefully adopting our new 2019 census report, and this report is coming concurrently, would there be any opportunity to update the information within the Economic Development Strategic Plan with the new census data before it became a published document?
Your Worship, to Councillor Laurie, I don't want to speak on behalf of the Growth and Commerce Committee, but I believe that that wouldn't be a significant issue.
Okay. And then just maybe one question on top of that then. The numbers that we use for this plan, is it based on municipal census or federal census? I think we need to be consistent with that, because if we're doing a program every 5 years to match the federal census, then if we start interjecting municipal census in there, then it might skew what we're trying to do. So is it municipal census that we actually do, or federal census that we use?
Your worship, to this point, we've been updating some of our marketing collateral as well as website material with both, so it would be all-encompassing.
Census. Okay, any other questions regarding this? Councilor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the strategic plan, and it's updated from 2016. We really didn't have an economic development plan of this magnitude before 2016. So my question, Mr. Mayor, is mostly to our economic development officer. When you came into this job 2 years ago, how beneficial was having a plan like this to you in your job?
Your worship, to Councillor Bennett, it's been instrumental. It's provided me with where we were going and how we got to where we are and where we want to be going. So it helped me direct my focus that way. Of course, I actually enjoyed doing the strat plan update to ensure that it's current and to take in consideration to everything going forward. But it's been instrumental in my position.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'll just add that, often when we have new councillors too, a plan like this, if you're not part of it when it first is coming out, you might not see the value of it or know exactly where things have come from. But I'm very glad with the members of the Growth and Commerce Committee that we have that many of them, not all, but many of them are new as of 2 years ago. And so I think going through this process and the plan update and with our economic development plan that we have now, I think that they too can see the focus that we've placed on economic development, and hopefully it's made their job on this committee that much easier.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie, I asked you already, so we'll go into Councilor Matties.
To council, I'd like to share just how much work that this economic development team has done. Our economic development officer, and I know Tanner has also worked with you. Just as I'm going through this whole process, or what we went through over the last couple of sessions of our group, just how much you've brought to the table, and then also how much in terms of how this has been presented and the work that you've done in the community. It's been excellent. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, nothing. Okay, thank you for the update. I appreciate the work of the Growth and Commerce Committee and again, the Economic Development staff. Thank you very much. And I think, Councillor Bennett, you mentioned something about not having a strategic plan since 2016. You're absolutely right. We didn't have one until we created until Council back in 2013 created the task force on economic and commerce in our community. From there was a few studies that were done to figure out where we were at that time and then where we wanted to go. And that's why there was no plan until 2016 until Council adopted it then. With that 9.3, I'll call the question all in favor. And that is carried. Going to 9.4, the Emergency Management Program update. And we're going to Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Town Council accept the Emergency Management Program update for information.
Okay. Go ahead, Administration.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship and members of Council. So as per our bylaw that we just adopted and the previous one, administration, who is the agency listed in the bylaw, is to provide an update to the committee, who is yourselves, on an annual basis with respect to the work that we're doing related to emergency management. So just a quick update as to what's happened and transpired since the last time we met, which was May last year. So Town of Stony Plain continues to be part of the Central Region Emergency Preparedness Partnership. So basically that's 24 communities across the Edmonton Metro region that get together on a quarterly basis and talk about emergency management and some of the issues related to it. From that work, we're very connected with the provincial government and additional training and additional incident management teams have been developed as a result of that partnership. And this year, they're looking at renewing that agreement and making sure that things that are covered within the agreement are valid and still things that we deem appropriate for emergency management. Basically, the agreement states that if something happens in another jurisdiction, they have the ability to pick up the phone and ask for resources from folks very close. So there's a fairly quick response. We continue to meet with the provincial government annually to ensure that our emergency management plan meets the specifications of the legislation, and they also provide us guidance in areas that they believe we can strengthen it and ensure that it's a document that we can utilize and it will do good work for us. No issues with that document over the past 5 years. So we continue to do some good work with respect to that and meeting the guidelines as set out by the province. Emergency management training, we're doing that from time to time as needed. The new regulations that were adopted this evening and come into effect in 2020 have some training requirements. Previous to those regulations, there were no training requirements, so we're bringing our emergency management team up to those basic training requirements. So that will happen in between now and the end of the year. Did list basically some of the stuff that's happened and some of the things that need to be completed yourselves. Did complete some training, which is part of that regulation update also. So we got you in early and got you educated early and up to speed early. Probably we need to have you back at that table because you probably don't remember anything that was said that day. So basically, if something happens, follow Tom. That's what needs to happen. There's some other things that we'll guide you through and put pieces of paper in front of you and direct to where the signature needs to happen and those types of things. So generally speaking, if emergency happens, council's rule is to do what you do best, and that's talk with the community, advise them of the plans that are taking place, and listen and get your the pulse of what's happening in the community, so that the folks that are dealing with the emergency can react to some of those items and provide you with good information from that particular event. We did last year do the emergency preparedness guide, which we continue. We still have copies of that, and we continue to hand them out. The graphic that you see in the report is a picture of the table that we had at the Emergency Preparedness Day, which took place in May this year, and it will continue to take place in May every year. If you don't have Alberta Emergency Alert on your telephone, on your mobile phone, you should probably load that app. They've upgraded that so that you can receive all alerts across the province. If you can just slide the bar that says follow me, and you'll get all the alerts that are basically in the area that your phone is currently. Or you can designate which areas you would like the alerts to come through. So as an example, I've loaded a couple communities that I typically frequent. Those are the only alerts I get. So the stuff up in high level I was not getting, simply because that's not one that I follow, and I didn't ask for all alerts. So it all depends on what you want to do. Your phone can go off multiple times a day or a week if you've got a lot of the settings on. Caution with that is if you have an Amber Alert, sometimes that doesn't come through on this particular. Benefit is the federal government has permitted push-outs of vital information to all cell phones if it's of a high critical nature. So you're probably aware of out east, they had a couple Amber Alerts, and people were getting messages at 4 in the morning. And rather than accepting that that was a good thing to have, they complained about the fact that they were woken up at 4:30 in the morning with an alert about a child that was abducted. So there's good and bad things with respect to alerts, but we're following the model of FEMA, which if you're in the United States, it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, and what server you have, or what service provider you have. If you're within a tower, proximity of which a tornado is going to come through, your phone's going to ping. So that's something that I think the federal government is trying to emulate here in Canada. The other thing also is 72-hour kits. So as an example, the recent downpour rain we had on Sunday, so yesterday evening, that event lasted a number of hours, so 24, 48 hours. Power was out, basements may have been flooded. the 72-hour kit is critical so that folks can stay in place and shelter in place, and they have the right provisions to ensure that emergency services aren't taxed in that first 72 hours. They're able to take care of themselves. Or if they're relocated to an area, they've got some personal items that they can take, and there's not a reliance on the folks that are trying to house them and provide them a safe and dry location to have to worry about some of those basic provisions in the first 72 hours. Just want to finish quickly with, there's a video that we did on the Emergency Management Day. If you didn't happen to be there, it's about 1:30, so if you'll indulge me, we'll just watch that really quickly.
This is our annual Emergency Preparedness Day in Heritage Park in Stony Plain. We want the general public to come out and basically see that, disasters aren't just red flashing lights. They're not always fire. We have floods, utility failures, things like that are going to impact.
We got to go explore inside of a fire truck. We got to watch them put out a fire, and then my son just got to go up in this cool Fortis bucket all the way to the top. I think one of the biggest benefit is for the kids, just to show them that, people who services are safe to go to and that kind of stuff, and kind of what they do and how they do keep us safe is really good.
We did a side-by-side demonstration of 2 simulated apartments. We wanted to have one with a sprinkler system and one not, just to prove the value of residential sprinklers. This is a real scenario, smoking on a couch. It happens all the time, and again, this was a great visual for the people that were in attendance, just to see how fast the fire moves and spreads. We hope people come to this event, learn about preparedness. Again, we've been promoting the 72-hour kit. Have some water, have some food, have your medications. You got to be ready to stand on your own 2 feet for those first 3 days.
Julie Andrews doesn't come on next. Okay, Your Worship, and in addition to that, the 2 structures that you saw there on that particular day, the fire department built 2 similar structures. One was with a sprinkler system, one was without a sprinkler system. And what it was to do was to show if you fell asleep on a couch smoking or went to bed and left a cigarette beside the couch, just how quickly your home could go up and how effective sprinklers are. So roughly speaking, the sprinkler went off, I think, at about 1:30, but I think a glitch happened, but really about 3 minutes, less than 3 minutes, the sprinkler went off, extinguished the right-hand side completely, and the left-hand side continued to free burn until the fire department put it out. They were going to leave it for 10 minutes, but we deemed it was a bit too hot and it was getting a bit too dangerous. So they put it out pretty quickly because there was a lot of flame and a lot of smoke going. So they'll probably do that again, but it shows that sprinklers do have a pretty good impact on a home when you're not there. I've been to many responses where someone's decided to put a hot dog on the stove after a 2 a.m. event and fallen asleep on the couch, and we're there in about 2 hours with a house full of smoke and a really, really nice ripe smell of a hot dog on the stove. So, but that's how quickly things happen, and it's sprinklers can put that stuff out. So that's basically our update for 2019.
Thank you very much. Members of council, any questions, comments regarding the update? Okay. See none, thank you very much, administration, for the presentation. The only complaint I have is the quality of the feed. Can we get better internet?
The right guy's in the corner, so we'll see what he can do.
Thank you very much. And I definitely appreciate the fact that we have the Emergency Preparedness Day where we allow residents from our communities to take a look to see what they can do to make sure that they're prepared, but also, like the school resource officers, to get them to interact with members of emergency management outside of an emergency setting. so that they get comfortable and get to know them. And then also, again, pushing the education about 72-hour preparedness, sprinkler systems, et cetera, just things that we need to do so that we are prepared to take care of ourselves for the first couple days before, if there is a major accident that came through. With that, members of council, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Moving on to 9.5, that's the update on the rec facility. Go ahead, Councillor Fletchko. It's your turn.
Thank you, Your Worship. That council approves the recreation facility conceptual design and public engagement update as information.
Okay. So as council is aware, this is a concept that we've been dealing with for the last little over a year, so go ahead with the update.
Your Worship, I'm not going to go into great detail because I think you've read the report, but essentially we've done some engagement. You saw us at the TLC for 3 days for a substantial number of hours. We also did a survey online, and the results are in the report. Just to summarize, the top 3 priority program spaces, I would say, would be the aquatics, the field house, gymnasium, and arena. However, arena was fairly low on that top 3 list. I would say that the other 2 were, arena was about 50%, and the other 2 were well above the 60-70 mark. So the other program spaces that council chose to include in the conceptual design, they were certainly deemed as priorities, but I think if we were doing this in a phased approach, that the community would be okay with it coming in a 2 or 3 phase as opposed to everything having to come in the first phase. So with that, the stats are there. Interesting stats with respect to respondents: 61% were from Stony Plain, 16% from Spruce Grove, 21% from Parkland County. So fairly equal to representation that when we do some similar event engagement like this, that's typically around the right ratios that we typically get from respondents. So no surprises there. With respect to moving to the next phase, as you can see on my 405, I think it's probably 406 or 404 in your package. We're at number 1, which is the revised facility concept. Based on the community not saying, change this, change that, take this out, or put something different in, we're recommending that we move to the next phase, which is do a little bit more in depth in terms of what types of things are included in those boxes, what the operational costs might be and might start to look like, and what, some further refinement on the capital. Plus, we'll also continue to have conversations with other potential partners in terms of delivering recreation facilities in our community, and also with our municipal partners with respect to what it looks like in terms of the relationship that we might have in seeing something like this be a success.
Thank you. All done. Thank you very much for the presentation. And members of council, open the floor up. Councillor Matties.
Your Worship, through to administration, I have a question with regards to the number from Spruce Grove and Parkland County that responded relative to Stony Plain. And you say it's typical of what we often get in terms of engagement. But my question is going back, and you may not have this information right now, but when we were looking at the Tri-Leisure Center, or even, for example, I don't know if we did engagement with the RCMP facility, what percentage from Parkland County and Spruce Grove responded to the feedback or the surveys at that time? Because, I mean, how do we know that we have represented what their needs are?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Matties. So I was not here when the TLC was conducted, but that went to plebiscite. So the majority of all 3 of our populations had the opportunity to say yes or no to that particular facility. Okay. And it came out on top as a yes, as we can see, because the facility exists today. RCMP, we would not go to public engagement on that particular facility. That's an expectation, or sorry, it's something we have to do. So on things that we have to do, typically you don't go and have engagement with folks. The 2017 indoor facility study plan, I don't have the numbers handy, but there were about 2,000 plus responses there. And we concentrated a lot of effort and energy into all 3 of our communities. So I think probably the percentages were a bit higher because the focus was a bit higher and more concentrated in terms of we went specifically to stakeholders in Parkland County and Spruce Grove and Stony Plain. With this particular engagement, we did stakeholders only in Stony Plain, which we listed. And we were at the TLC, which captured just general public and population. And then the online survey, anyone could go onto our webpage and put their comments in. So it didn't matter if you're from Stony Plain, Spruce Grove, or Parkland County, you had the ability to go onto our webpage and fill out that survey. So it depends on your engagement, and depends on how you're targeting people and who you're inviting to the table with purpose, and if you're just going out there and asking for general commentary. But I believe based on what we've done, the percentages, essentially are around the right. 60% from us and 20 from the others. That's pretty accurate with respect to if we're specifically targeting in our own community with respect to this particular facility. However, the user groups are not just from Stony Plain. There are people from Spruce Grove and Parkland County that are part of our Stony Plain user groups. So we're pretty big and large interconnectivity with respect to our stakeholders.
Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. As I read through the report, there were a lot of different suggestions, ideas for different amenity spaces, comments about inclusions, and so on and so forth. You've kind of already mentioned that there was no outstanding comment that made us think of making any changes, anything like that. So I'm just curious, with some of these suggestions, are any of them at all being considered, or are we moving forward at this point in time with the facility as we've already seen it?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie. So some of the items that are included in there, I think can be accommodated in some of the structures that we've already determined. So as an example, a field house, if the right lines are there, then some of the activities that have been presented probably can be accommodated in that. Not necessarily dedicated specifically for that activity, but certainly gives the opportunity for that activity to take place. One that ranked a little bit lower probably was the adventure side of things. So that square footage might, at the end of the day, when we come down to the ultimate decision as to what might be being built in that facility, that might alter. I think at this point, when you start talking about specifics with individuals, then we might get some different responses to the questions. But generally speaking, we were looking at whether or not the community felt supported what we were generally trying to do with this conceptual idea. Once we get into the specifics, that might start to generate different opportunities and options and things that we'd bring back to council and say, hey, maybe indoor adventure is not the right choice at this time. Maybe 10 courts of pickleball is the right choice at this time for consideration. And this is the cost implication and how it might look. And here's the two options that you have to debate and consider.
And just as a follow-up, Your Worship, the one item that I think stood out to me the most that I haven't seen in our plan so far is actually child minding and the room for child minding. So I'm happy to hear that there'll be consideration in respect to that. We feel that a lot of this can be accommodated within the existing footprint. So I'm looking forward to seeing that coming back.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bennett?
Mr. Mayor, I just need some clarification. I think in your opening remarks, you said that the top three priorities were the aquatic center, the refresh my memory. What were the top three?
Yeah, sorry. When you look at the percentages of what people supported, so I wouldn't say there's a top three. I'm suggesting that the ones that ranked on a higher level of priority were aquatics, the gym, field house, and ice. Okay. With the user groups that we purposely brought into the room. Those were the three that ranked the highest. And if you look at the list of just the general population, the same held true in terms of the facilities that the community would like to see constructed, probably without doubt, and there's others that they could probably live without.
So, Mr. Mayor, a thought occurred to me is that at the time when we were doing these stakeholder consultations and public engagement, it was pretty well known that we were probably going to partner with Parkland School Division to build a gym there. And so I'm wondering if that was perhaps maybe, did that kind of skew the priorities of people because they thought that a gym was already going to happen in another building, and now we have decided that we're not going to do that. And so do you think that the gym would be a higher priority now that we know we have to build one on our own?
Your Worship, through the Councillor Bennett, that still ranks fairly high with people, regardless of school or no school gymnasium, and the town's involvement in that particular partnership.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, because that was ranked number 2. So okay, Councillor Pletchko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Let's refer to page 415 of 466. We'll talk a little bit about the satisfied. It's a need for our community, the campus setup. You've added some concerns in with the satisfied that should be really dissatisfied, I think. Parking is a concern. So when I go down to the dissatisfied, correct me if I'm wrong, but where it says, where do you live? This seems to be 100% of the respondents from Stony Plain. Is that incorrect?
So thank you for bringing up the red on there. So basically what we did for you, just as a comparison, if you look up at the, excuse me, the main body of the, so figure 2.2.1, which is 412 or 411 perhaps in your package.
413.
Pardon me?
413.
Yeah, 413. So if you look at 61%, it was Stony Plain. So 90% of the 61% in red. So if you look at the red numbers, right? So if we took 61% as 100%, the red numbers reflect that 100% of Stony Plain. So aquatic centers, 90% of Stony Plain residents believe that that was a facility that should be included. 87, the arena, and so on. So the red numbers only reflect how Stony Plain residents commented on these particular questions. So 61% was still the total of what was collected from the engagement. Of the total 61%, if we took and said 100% of the people that responded were Stony Plain residents, the red numbers reflect that 100% only, the 61% is Stony Plain only. So basically the red is giving you Stony Plain only, the black is giving you the collective, everyone included.
So reading through this report, the dissatisfied seems to come out on a number of different areas. And I just want to point that out that, you know, some of the things that have drawn me to be a bit concerned with the location of it has been the road networking. Regional facilities should be close to hotels and stuff like that. Access to the site is not overly a great portion of it. We're putting it in a quiet residential neighborhood close to stuff. Comment is near Heritage Park and the highway. I imagine that should be a satisfied thing, is where that goes. So what I find is reading through the report, some of the stuff that should be satisfied is in the dissatisfied category. And again, I'm just looking for clarity if that's how I'm reading this report, or if it is truly they're dissatisfied that it is a dissatisfied relationship, that it's not near the highway and not near the Heritage Park, or is it dissatisfied?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Pletchko, I think my interpretation would be, you know, it might not be the most ideal location. We did preface the location being picked as it's town-owned land, as opposed to this facility can be parachuted into any parcel with the right acreage size that will accommodate the correct parking requirements and the correct spatial allocation for the facility size that we're looking at. But we're using that particular location because we own the property, so that eliminates a cost to the project. Plus, there's a lot of recreation establishment already in that location, so the relationship and the synergies over there are higher than if you were to go to a different location. But at the end of the day, council also gets to make the decision whether or not that is the right location, and my experience has been the further you go into and the closer you get to, we're making an $80 million decision, a lot of those questions are answered and a lot of those debates start to happen. At this point, no one's pulling the trigger on $80 million. We're committed to this project and we're continuing down the path of making sure that this is the right project for us. And at the end of the day, we will have the right project at the right location with the right components and with the right community support and the right partnerships to ensure that we have success when we move forward with this project.
I'm very excited about the project. I think it's something that's really needed for the region. However, going forward, I would really encourage us as we move forward that we don't focus on just Stony Plain. We focus on our regional partners because we want them to be part of it as well. We need them to have the accessibility that makes it convenient for everybody within the tri-region. So I think if we ask some of the specific questions where the dissatisfaction comes in, that will help us be able to decide too. Because lands can always be sold and other lands purchased too. So I think very good report, and I look forward to moving this project forward in the future.
Thank you.
Your Worship, too, maybe just a quick comment for regarding Councillor Plutchko's, I think, initial question too. If I recall, you were able to choose whether you were satisfied or dissatisfied with the site and what was being proposed, and then enter comments. So I believe if you picked satisfied but still had a concern about parking and put it on your comment sheet, it'll show up on the satisfied list, but it'll sound like a concern or whatever you want to call it. So I think that's the explanation just for why some are in that area, not maybe in the dissatisfied, but.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Meyer? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to administration. Just as we're moving along from revised facility concept to, I do see a number of these questions, and I would specifically speaking about outdoor field and amenities. We're not, I mean, in my head I hear facility, so I think rec facility and it building, and then I sort of separate out outdoor fields. Now, am I just doing that wrongly, or is the next step going to also include outdoor fields and amenities?
Your Worship, through to the Deputy Mayor, in order to build the facility as we've conceptually approved it, we have to have impact on current outdoor facilities. So there is a requirement for us to rebuild some of those facilities. So that will be part of the next opportunity for us. We have better understanding as to how the school lands are impacted now with some of the planning that's moving forward with relation to that. So we also understand now that 10 acres and what some of the restrictions may or may not be on that particular parcel also, because our original plans actually push back into that where the school is going to go now. So we'll have to do some revisions to the drawings to ensure that some of the things that we were intending to do on that 10-acre outdoor parcel, we can still continue to do. So ball diamonds and those types of things that will be displaced because of the construction of a building, can we still accommodate them in the fashion of which we originally drew them, or because now we have more understanding with respect to that school site, what is that relationship and how does that look from that perspective? So outdoor facilities certainly will be in the continued phases of this project.
Okay, just another question. I'm glad you brought up the school. Now, I understand we're not talking specifics, and we're not getting down to the nitty-gritty or anything like that as of now. But obviously, with the school going in where it's going, I can't imagine, A, the football team's shacks remaining in the location that they currently occupy. B, and now this is just more a comment to the rest of council, those shacks look pretty terrible. It might be something, while we move forward with this, we keep that in mind.
Okay. That's a good comment, Deputy Mayor. I believe page 422 has kind of the preliminary site concept based on what we're talking about. It's not 100% designed if it's going to be here or not. And again, there
Right.
looks like to be a new clubhouse for both football and for rugby as well.
Right, and then if, on page 412, I see one of the comments from the participants is specifically, what's, I think it's on page 412, one of the bullets there, what's the deal? I forget exactly how it's worded. Basically, what is the status of the football clubhouse? So I'm just curious, as I have had a few questions on it. Make sure it's not being dropped off the radar or anything like that.
Oh, that's good comments. Thank you.
Your worship, as the school site continues to build out and we continue to get plans that are more confirmed, and if it does impact any facilities that are currently on lands that will be impacted by that construction, we're certainly talking with those user groups to ensure that the right solution is there for all involved to ensure that their programs continue. The football club in Stony Plain is very active. They're a great community partner. We've partnered with them on several projects. Just as an example, they put the lights up on the field. They put the scoreboard up. We paid for the scoreboard, but they did all the electrical and erected it and placed it. So we've got a great partnership with the football club. It's fairly easy for us to pick the phone up, and we're in constant communication with them with respect to the plans that we'll undertake in the next construction season related to that school. And we do know that it might be pushing close to that berm or that hill to the east of the school site. So we probably will have to look at that. And I think I've spoken with the general manager of planning and infrastructure, and he did almost definitely mention that would have to be moved in some shape or fashion. So we'll have to be working with them.
Sure.
And then I would just like to just share with, again, I realize we're not into the nitty gritty, but I was made aware by one of the football coaches in regards to a safety issue with rubberized tracks being around the outside of football fields. I did notice somewhere on here some remark about, and I realize again that this is all just up in the air, blue sky stuff. But in regards to a rubberized outdoor track surrounding a football field, he said it's ankle breaking, basically.
Your worship, through to Councillor Meyer, anything can be done with money. Rubber tracks are very expensive, and it's certainly something that can be costed as an option. I think.
Oh,
yeah.
I think they mean they would prefer not.
Not okay.
Not
okay.
to see.
And
but I don't want to.
Yeah. And as that site continues to develop, I mean, our preference is to keep the track. It's well used by folks of the community. They do walk over there and they do the loops. Certainly, the school may use it. The new school may use it also. So it might be something that we have to have continued conversation about with respect, as it is a costly item to repair and maintain and keep up.
Your worship, if I may add just a bit of comment there too. So although, yeah, I mean, it's not at the nitty gritty level at this point in time, but every time that we go to the public and seek feedback or come into the chambers and advise council of what that feedback is or bring decision matters in front of council, what the positive side of that is that there's more certainty to the area there. And as that certainty comes along, whether it's every 6 months or 8 months that decisions are made or so on, it provides the user groups more certainty. It provides us more opportunity to go and work with or deal with or partner with the different user groups out there. And although there's still a lot of work to be done, and I mean, frankly, absolute go-aheads from council still have to be given. This is still planning and discussion and proposal, feasibility studies stage. It does create that discussion in the community and has people considering what can happen out there and what part of what happens they can play a role with the town or with the community. And so, Your Worship, I'll just leave that comment at that. As we move forward, we'll hear more questions, more comments, more opportunities for partnership, more challenges as we continue to clarify as we move forward.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? No. Yeah, thank you for the update. I'll just draw council's attention to page 416 of 466. I just want to provide some comments and thank administration for reaching out to the 28 organizations in our community and around our community to provide feedback. So which is excellent, because I think that's what we wanted as a council, is to make sure that we engage those organizations that would be using those facilities. And actually, to my surprise, if you look at the public engagement from the 28 organizations, 85% of them supported aquatics, the highest need out of 28 of them. And then 70% was for gyms and field houses. Then, surprisingly, 50% supported arenas, the number 3 need, based on what our community organizations felt that this community needs. So something just to bear in mind when we talk about phasing and what we can afford, what we can afford, and how we're going to build it out over the next few years. Again, we had 28 organizations in our community that use our facilities saying aquatics is number 1. Then it's gyms and field houses, followed by arenas.
Your Worship, just to clarify, there were not 48 swimmers in the room either. We limit it to the number of people per organization so that we didn't have that swaying of.
Yes, I know that was just, again, noted that was only 46 representatives of 2 from each. Thank you. Councilor Loy?
Yes, thank you, and I'm glad you went to 416 because I made a note. Item 5, is that correct? Parking pickleheads, or is it parkland pickleheads?
No, I think that's right, because there's also parkland pickleheads.
I saw them down there, the yellow near West Pickleball, but it was more of a curiosity thing.
It's probably parkland. It was probably a typo.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a moot point, really, just that I just parking pickleheads.
I'll correct it with our consultant.
Yeah, because there's also the Parkland Pickleheads Club, and then the yellow near West Pickleball.
Pickleball. No.
Like they must play in the parking lot.
It's just a point, and a moot point at that.
That's good. Thank you very much. Any other questions and comments regarding the update, Council? Okay, thank you. So again, looking forward at the recommendation again is to accept for information, coming back to Council late September and October as we continue to move on this process, and hopefully Council approval for maybe phasing, design, etc. in December, I believe. Okay. Thank you very much. I will call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried. Moving on to 9.6, which is the 2018 offset levy report. Councillor Loy, please.
Yes, Your Worship. The Town Council, 1, accept the 2018 offsite levy report for information. Pardon me. And 2, authorize administration to defer resolution 182/08/18/SP to review the offsite levy bylaw from 2020 to 2021.
Okay. Thank you. Administration, and provide.
Thank you, Your Worship. A new requirement of the MGA is that the town report annually on the offsite levies received and utilized for each type of facility and infrastructure within each benefiting area. The town established their bylaw in 2005. There was a minor update in 2018. The town currently collects offsite levies for roads, sanitary sewers, and water systems. A previous bylaw allowed for the collection for storm sewers. So in your agenda package, you will see the offsite levies report for 2018, which, working with finance, the numbers at year-end 2018 were just over $6.1 million in offsite levies counted as deferred revenue. Also in the package, we've had a little bit of a look ahead to where some of these monies might be needed, and so I did include a table outlining some of the projects which will be upcoming. This is not an exhaustive list of projects. It's basically a forecast of the next projects in each of the various infrastructure areas. So you can see in there that some of the projects definitely have more money required than money currently available. So funding decisions will have to be made in the future. Also in 2018, Council did pass a motion to amend the current bylaw, to have the offsite levy bylaw report brought back to Town Council for review at the Governance and Priorities meeting in September 2020, along with the soft services report for information. So this motion is the reason for the second While the second part of the motion is in front of you today. Originally, the offsite levy bylaw was scheduled for completion in 2020 with the Transportation Master Plan scheduled for 2021. It would be extremely difficult for us to complete the offsite levy in 2020 without having a master plan done first because the master plan will outline the project timing and update the project estimates to provide the proper information with which to base the bylaw. So as Council may be aware and may remember, we did update the Stormwater Master Plan in the last 6 months. The utility master plan has been updated and is coming before council later this summer, early fall. And so the transportation master plan is the final plan which requires updating to really provide a basis for the offsite levy. So the recommendation we have in front of us is that we defer that motion, authorize administration to defer the motion so that we can reverse the order and do the offsite levy bylaw before or after completion of the transportation master plan. I'd also like to note that there is a regional committee that has been formed to explore regional expanded levy initiatives. So this regional committee is in particular looking at some of the new opportunities and challenges in front of municipalities. With the new MGA, the scope was expanded to allow community recreation facilities, fire halls, police stations, and libraries. So regionally, there's interest to work together to understand the opportunity and challenge and how that might roll out, in particular working with some of the development communities such as UDI and others to work regionally on doing things and kind of at the same pace or the same understanding so that legal challenges, et cetera, will have the best opportunity to prevent them and minimize our risk. So we are participating in this regional committee and it's just basically getting underway. So as we go through this year and into 2020, more information on those opportunities will come forward and we'll report back to council at that time. So that concludes my report.
Thank you very much for the report, members of council. You see the report and you see the offsite levies balances and reports, and as well as projected future capital projects that will be used and to be funded from. Members of council, any questions and comments? Councillor Loy?
Yes, Your Worship. It's just more like an accounting procedure. I think I refer to 426 of 466, and I'm just going to use the top line roads 2018. But I see a negative sign in front of all the numbers. When I added the numbers up, opening balance, levies, received interest, it does equal the 2,310,580.14. But why the negative sign? I don't understand that.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Loy, it's because it's reported as a deferred revenue, so it would be a liability. So in the accounting records, it's a credit, if you think of it that way, and that's why it shows as a negative here. You can essentially look at it without, that might have been less confusing to show in this report, but that's why it's shown this way. It's because it's a liability, so a credit from an accounting perspective.
Yeah. Hey, I trust you. You're the accountant. I'm not. It's just that when I see a negative in front of something, I kind of say.
Okay, I think that's the easiest way probably to look at it, if I can try to explain it, is that it's a negative because that's the money that we have to use on roads because that's what we collected those offset levies for.
Yes.
So we can't use it, so it becomes a liability to us that we can't have it in a bank and use it for other things. It is used for roads, so therefore it is a negative for us because we have to use it for that. And that's what, and then we put it in later on. So the thing is,
no, I don't. I won't say I understand. What I am saying to you is that for me personally, the simple mind, I'd just rather see the numbers and say, okay, yes, we have to use it on roads, and the 870,000 and change we have to use on storm. It just, when I see the negative there, it's a negative connotation.
to understand what you're saying.
That's all.
Councillor Matties?
Your Worship, through to administration. I have a question with regards to the new levies with the MGA and some discussion with regards to the Edmonton Metro Regional Board and UDI and consistency of how this would be utilized throughout the region. If you could just give us a little bit of information about that.
I guess, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Matties, we're still at the early stages of exploring this with our regional partners. It's a great interest to all the municipalities. how and when this, who would be the first one out of the gate to include any of these new opportunities in their levies. And so rather than create an uncompetitive situation or an unbalanced situation in the region, which could very easily happen, whereby, for instance, if one municipality decided to include all of these things in their rates, then their rates could easily double or triple, in which case they would be at an extreme disadvantage compared to the other municipalities. So I guess what's fair and reasonable to assume to be charged and what the development community can bear in each of these areas is of great interest. So working cooperatively, we hope to work through some of those challenges. I don't know if the town manager wants to expand.
Yeah, and I think, Your Worship, the other thing I would add, I mean, in the discussions that have taken place so far, I mean, have involved UDI, Urban Development Institute, in some of the discussions. I don't know if they would be involved in every single conversation, but the notion is to approach this as an open conversation, to ensure that UDI has some understanding of where the metro region in this particular instance is heading with these types of levies. Part of the rationale for that, Your Worship, is certainly to, we try to have them alongside the municipalities as we develop these. It's also to, seek their input or understanding, because frankly, Your Worship, these are the types of levies or regulations that municipalities can put in that can be legally challenged. So we need to make sure that we're, basing this stuff on values and principles, and that there's some methodology that's clear. For those of you that have ever seen the offsite levy calculation process, the water, the sewer, road stuff is there's a methodology to it. It's not just a number that's kind of pulled out of thin air. Distribution of people for fire halls or distribution, and I forget the words right off the top of my head as to how it's defined for recreation and fire. Maybe a little more open for interpretation. So we need to make sure that we're all on the same page, both municipalities and UDI, to be on the same page with that determination. So as the general manager's mentioned, there's been some initial discussions. I think once we get back into the fall is when administrations will be getting back together and working on bringing in some consultants, so to speak, to start shaping that further.
Okay, thank you. And good comments, Councillor Matties, and I have to concur with those comments. And also, I would add that to the Bill 7, that it has to be kind of a regional approach. We don't want to have individual municipalities racing to the bottom or racing something that, in essence, will hurt our communities in the long run for the small gain that we get in the front end. So thank you for that continued networking with our industry partners and our regional partners. Thank you. Any other questions regarding the 2018 offsite report? Okay. So then my question is, when we see this again in 2021, then there'll be some recommendations based on the conversations through UDI Bill 7 to see what other offset levies could or should not be included?
Your Worship, yes, that would be the plan, depending on progress between now and then. We would be able to report back why they're included or why they're not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, see no more hands up. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Matties, please. 9.7, and that's the municipal census.
The Town Council accept the 2019 Municipal Census Report as presented.
Okay, thank you. So, Council, we had the presentation earlier by ISL. Any additional comments from our administrative staff?
I have no further comments. I am here to address any further comments from you.
Okay, members of council, this is open for full comments, debate, and questions. So any questions regarding the report that we received? Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. As I reviewed the report in relation to how it splits some of the census areas and splitting it by subdivision title, I didn't really feel that the information that was being provided there showed a lot of value, because when you look sheer landmass size of something like West Terra or Old Town in comparison to a Sun Meadows or a Brookview or a Homesteads, they're vastly different. And I think what I would have found more value in the reporting would have been something more along the line of densities. So taking the town, splitting it into equal sized portions using either quarter sections or some type of grid line, and reporting on the densities and reporting on the demographics within that specific area. I'll use an example. The Homestead subdivision actually loops into Sonora apartment buildings. The Homestead subdivision is entirely a seniors subdivision, but when you look at the demographic stats, it doesn't actually even appear as a seniors rich area because it's lumped in there. But then when you go to some of the other areas, they're designated out differently. So maybe just some feedback for future censuses in respect to the data on it, because I mean, it's very easy when you have a landmass the size of Westera to show up in every single statistic as the largest for every demographic, because simply put, when you've got that big of an area, you're going to have that many people in it. So something a little more defined where we're comparing equal to equal, I think would be good to get a good idea of densities, demographics in certain areas of town and so on.
Okay.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie, we can definitely hold that of consideration for a future census. The mapping is predefined, so agreeing with some of the subdivision areas that we have and the issues with our mapping is something to consider for a future census.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Your Worship, too, if I maybe just add a brief comment to that, and I know there was a question earlier about, net, people per hectare or units per hectare, and, despite the report that's provided, we also now have access to that to the raw data, which can then be, be cross-checked, manipulated, so to speak, to find out, densities or what. To be familiar with the EMRB, there's projected density in an ASP, and then there's as-built density as to what's actually ended up on the site, so to speak. And, you can do that both through the ASP numbers, then to the as-built or what houses, so to speak, are out there. And then you can go even a step further, when your average 2.58 or whatever it was per household or whatever. So long story short, Your Worship, now that the raw data is there, you can, the analysis and application of it is what happens, I guess, over the next couple of years, if you want to look at it that way.
Thank you. Councillor Loy?
Yes, Your Worship. And just for clarification, I'd like if our administration could give us the numbers. I missed them in the initial presentation, but we went from one figure to another figure, which is 653 total people over that time. What did that represent each year as a percentage, like
1.2% a year.
3?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, it's actually through the mayor to administrate. 1.2?
Yes, I think the presentation was a 3.8% increase, and then averaging out to 1.2% a year.
And that's every year? Yeah. Then a comment on that. That number seems to me to be quite low. I think it's something that we should keep in our minds when we're doing our ECDEV and stuff like that. And the project that we had brought to us tonight, it's 1.2% is not really, to me, a sustainable number. I could be wrong, but I'd like to see it double that for sure.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions regarding that? Okay. I have a question regarding the presentation that was provided for us. That would be page 14 of the presentation that was sent to us. I just have a question because it looks like Old Town, downtown, on the pie chart there, it looks like 95% of the residents are multi-unit. Is that correct?
Oh, I have the report.
Your Worship, I'll verify that with the with ISL.
Okay, because I've been through Old Town quite a few times, and a lot of them are single detached. And that's that little dot in the middle. Okay. Any other questions? So going forward with the census and stats, How do we use this in our community? Do we push it out in terms of branding, exercise, part of the ECDEV, of how many people we have, etc.?
Your Worship, I can handle that. So what do we typically do with the census? Yes, it's provided to our regional partners, it's provided to our school divisions for their planning purposes. The numbers will filter into, as was indicated earlier tonight, into some of our actual strategic plans or corporate planning documents. I'll stop there, Your Worship, if that's what the question you were asking. What do we do with it? That's how they get put out into the community.
Okay, sounds good. With that, I don't see any more hands up. Councillor Meyer, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just through to administration. Just quickly, what was the price tag to do this census?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Meyer, the budgeted item was $85,000.
Okay, thank you.
And Your Worship, just another one. The province of Alberta, does recognize municipal census as your grant funding allocation. So it is provided, I believe, by the end of the summer. It needs to be provided to government of Alberta, and then it will kick in. Historically, that's been the way Alberta has treated it. So any of our provincial funding will reflect a change based on these numbers, all things being considered the same. Funding levels by the province, all things considered the same, would include these numbers.
Yeah, thank you. Any more hands up? No, I see none. I'll call the question in favor. It is carried. Councillor Laurie, please. 9.8.
And I move that Town Council accept the Q2 2019 Strategic Plan and Corporate Plan Report for information.
Okay, 9.8. Go ahead, administration.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I'm going to just provide you with a brief update on our Q2 Strategic Plan and Corporate Plan updates for your information, and we can talk through any questions that you might have following that. So as you're well aware, we presented and updated our strategic plan earlier this year in March. It was presented to you for approval, and since then we're already at the halfway point in 2019. Can you believe that? Time flies. So just to start, some highlights from the different 5 pillars of our strategic plan, starting with our governance and partners component of our plan. This section speaks to how we engage our community, utilize integrated decision-making, and align with community priorities. And a couple of key initiatives that we were focused on in the second quarter of 2019. As you're well aware, we've been doing a lot of heavy lifting and allocating of resources towards the Edmonton Metro region and working with our regional partners, particularly around regional transit. And newly struck task force related to shared investment for shared benefit. We also took some time as a result of the provincial election results and the formation of the new government with the UCP party leading the majority to provide an update to our advocacy strategy and reflect on some of the impact related to the work that we do with our other levels of government to advance our priorities and initiatives through those folks. And finally, we also invested some time in launching and working with you around our tri-municipal regional plan. That's going to take us through the next year and a half worth of work to work with Parkland County and Spruce Grove on the development of a regional plan document. So we started that process, and I believe we also were recently received an understanding from the federal government through Western diversification of funding for that plan to be completed as well. And Parkland County is leading the administration of that project on our behalf. Under economic opportunity, and I know that this evening you've received a very detailed update with regards to our economic development strategy and to that document as well, so I won't speak to the specifics of that, but our Growth and Commerce Committee has worked with our economic development team on updating strategic planning document. As well, I believe you were all aware and invited to the launch of the Edmonton Global brand and regional narrative that took place a couple of weeks ago or last week. I can't remember the exact date now. So that is our regional economic development lead agency that's working to attract investment to the region on our behalf, and we're a founding member of that organization, and we will continue to work with them to share our story and work with them to invite business development and investment to our region with our partners on that project. In addition to that, of course, we're in the midst of construction season, and phase 3 of the downtown redevelopment project as well is well underway. The next area of focus for us under supportive infrastructure, which is a theme that features the value and emphasis that we place on maintenance and innovation around recreation and cultural facilities, parks and open spaces, and our functional utilities. And again, we received a very detailed update on our planning for a recreational facility for the region this evening earlier. And in addition to that, I'll just mention the highlight of the next phase 2 of our signage strategy. So last year we installed a number of entrance signs around the highway, and the phase 2 is now also well underway, and we've installed 3 facility signs, and we're working our way through the development of 2 digital signs, which will be placed one at Heritage Park and one at Rotary Park as well. So those are in process as well. Under community development, which is an area that outlines our unique physical, cultural, and social ways which we build community. I think we were really pleased and kind of a high emphasis on public art launching this last quarter. We unveiled our public art piece at Heritage Park, Enduring Connections. And then I think the next week after that, we unveiled our next mural project, our second of 3 at the Meridian Foundation. And I know that the third mural is in the works and under construction as we speak, and is going to be launched later this fall as well. So kind of an exciting couple of months around public art in the community. The other thing that's important to note is the report that you received at the end of May with regards to the Mayor's Task Force on Community Development and Citizenship, and that project is also being quickly and efficiently being implemented this fall with our Neighbor Days and Ambassador Program that will be launched in partnership with FCSS. So that project is well underway also. And as we've been talking on many occasions with you in council chambers and through administration, our servicing plans to support the reconstruction and the replacement of Stony Plain Central School, which will happen this summer. And then over the next year, we're going to watch the construction of that new school facility in Old Town South, which is a very exciting project for our community, for our students, as well for the province. So we look forward to that project being constructed. Finally, under our environmental responsibilities theme, which outlines how we seek to balance the community's impact on the natural environment with its growth and development, with our growth and development needs. Most importantly, I wanted to highlight in there the relaunch of the Just Don't Trash It campaign, which was presented to you in April, and we're working through the changes and impacts related to the recycling program, and working with our citizens on understanding the results of those changes and how we can work towards shifting not only our recycling habits, but also our consumer habits as well. And those changes are not easy, and we have to be diligent in our efforts, not only to communicate that, but how we as individuals take responsibility for those changes in our own personal lives as well. So those are kind of the key updates that I wanted to share with you at this point. Under the corporate plan section of the report, there's a number of highlighted updates there related to our Old Town Community Plan, the review and identification of cost savings, our fire department master plan, the municipal development plan update, the downtown library expansion, the downtown redevelopment project, phase 3, signage strategy, phase 2, South Park Drive extension, our community recreation design and cultural center feasibility study, cemetery, the Stony Plain School replacement servicing, the Mayor's Task Force on Community and Citizen Development, and our municipal development standards. So I won't speak to each of those items, but I'd be happy to answer any questions or refer to our general manager staff that's here with us tonight for any questions council may have this evening. Thank you,
Thank you for the presentation and the update on where we are at in terms of our strategic plan and our corporate plan. Before I ask questions, actually, since you brought it up earlier, cemetery. I believe that started quite a few years ago. And last we heard was some monitoring and wells, etc. Where are we with that?
Your Worship, we're in discussions currently with Parkland County on the cemetery site, which is co-owned by them. And so we'll be able to report back to council after those discussions continue.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the report. Members of council, questions, comments? Oh, over there. Councillor Bennett, please.
Mr. Mayor, throughout this report, when I read under review by administration, I'm wondering, is there a timeline for those items?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Bennett and all of Council, those items have been noted as a priority of Council through this strategic plan, and administration is trying to identify opportunities to place them within the time frame that is within the strategic plan itself, and those items will either be brought forward through the corporate planning process for Council's consideration or through our other planning processes as a presentation to you separately. So those items are noted as within administration's purview right now and preparation for presentation to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Councillor Matties?
Just a question with regards to the environmental responsibility. I'm just not clear what Explore initiatives and program that reduce environmental impact and benefit to residents, and that's under review by administration as well. Like what specifically are we saying there?
I can answer that one, Your Worship. So yeah, key actions. So again, coming out of the strat plan, not to reread it, but explore initiatives and program to reduce environmental, and then under review by administration. So to be clear with council, what that is really saying is that there's a number of different things we're looking at, or could be looking at, or should be looking at. There's numerous programs, so on and so forth, and they're being explored. We're considering them. There's some thought being given to them, but there's nothing that I would say at this point in time that would be concrete or specific, unless one of the general managers wants to point one out that I may have missed. For example, okay, and I'll just give you an example of something that's being considered. We talked a bit about it this morning, but we were contacted, I don't know, a couple months ago by, there's a grant available for what would essentially be hiring of staff to do some reviews of all your facilities for environmental impacts and so on and so forth. So there was some conversation at the tri-region level, so all three of us were, hey, is that something we want to look at? Okay, Spruce Grove, I think, was going to take a look into it further and get back to us. So I give you that example as one where that's a topic that we're talking about, but there's no definitive action on it at this point. There's no definitive recommendation coming to council anytime soon, unless we hear back from our regional partners and they want to move forward and we want to move forward, then we'd be back in the chamber. So not sure if that's a clear explanation, but I'll leave it at that. Certainly answer any questions on that explanation that council may have.
Just following up on that, just wondering with regards to our natural areas and our, basically our policy and programs with regards to how we manage our parks and our natural areas in the community. Is that one of the programs on your list? And maybe we could have a list of all the things you're looking at so we know.
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Matty. So the natural areas one is one that is a council motion that we are working on. That's due to come back to council in the August council meeting. So that one in particular was one you directed us to do work on. Other items we have not been directed to work on. We are considering, but I guess resourcing would be the major consideration at this time. I think it's fair to say that in the environmental responsibility pillar, transit is taking up a lot of our time, and that's transit is seen to be good for the environment, so that would be a strong consideration for where our time is going right now.
Thank you.
Your Worship, the other just verbal update too I can give under that pillar or commitment. The third one down there, ICC waste harmonization study completed and under review by administration. And again, that was a lengthy process and a lot of good work by our regional partners. So this was the report that was looked to. I mean, how do we blend our systems together better? How do we harmonize? How do we, I mean, do we all need to have our drop-off points open at the same hours? Maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. Are we all picking up the same things or not picking up the same things at our recycle centers, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So there's a lot of good work, a lot of effort put in by municipal staff from all three municipalities on that one. There is a report, it was finalized and presented to our administrative ICC group. In this particular instance, City Manager Cotterill was the lead CAO of the group, and one of our staff was the sort of chair of the working group, if you want to call it that. So, I mean, upon his leaving, it sat a little bit, is one way to put it. So that's when we got to pick up together again on the three municipal administrations and start moving that forward. Again, there's good work there. It does have recommendations as to how we could harmonize our systems better. I don't believe that report has been presented at any of the three partner councils at this point in time, but the work has been done, and it's just waiting some further action.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Deputy Mayor, go ahead. Councilor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. While we're on this page talking about garbage, it's just as the Don't Trash It campaign, two questions. In terms of our communication, would communications be responding to comments on social media, or would they only, so that's my first question. And then just in terms of, I know we often speak of our diversion rate. I was wondering also if with the Don't Just Trash It and the changes, if we have, if that number's changed at all.
Your Worship, through to Deputy Mayor Meyer and the rest of Council, I'll just speak to the first question with regards to social media monitoring. So our communication staff does monitor all comments and questions that come through our social media accounts, our town social media accounts. They certainly respond to specific questions by anyone that posts a direct message or a response or a question to a direct message that we've posted. We do monitor the comments, and if there is if there's an opportunity to provide clarification based on a statement or a comment, they certainly do that, but they don't respond to every comment or post or response that's provided if it's an opinion or something that doesn't require a response, I guess would be appropriate. So they do monitor that and respond wherever appropriate to those types of comments and posts.
And just for clarification, now that would be our posts that we make. We're not going to say the Stony Plain up chat or the Stony Plain chat to field questions there.
That's correct. That's correct. And regarding the second question with the diversion rates, I can just indicate that when those rates are monitored and publicized through our Planning and Infrastructure Department, we would communicate those out once they are finalized and ready for publishing. And I'll just look to the General Manager if he's aware of kind of the timing of those at this point. I'm not sure what they're at.
Your Worship, just to supplement, yeah, so the changes have been taken into account in June, so it's only been 1 month. So we'll continue to monitor them and report back to Council if we see any impacts or I guess changes in behavior.
Okay. Good questions? Any other comments? Okay. Seeing none, thank you for the update. Look forward to the next quarterly report to see how far we've progressed. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, members of council, I think we're done our agenda. Hopefully we can keep information items in council discussion fairly brief, unless we can call recess. So we'll start with Councillor Matties.
Brief, because it's my mom's birthday tonight, and I'm trying to get out of here. So I can go to a birthday party.
Good. Councillor Loy?
Bring me a piece of cake. I got nothing to say.
Councillor Pletchko?
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I just want to wish everybody a great summer and look forward to seeing you at some of the events that are around town throughout the summer, and look forward to council after summer.
Okay, sounds good. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just bring to the administration's attention the boulevard on 779 between 55th and north of that to about 53rd. Oh, actually, all along 779. I do appreciate that it is it's a construction zone and all the rest of that, and it's not our highway per se, but the weeds are growing up very high. It would do us good to cut them.
That's good. I think we raised this question a little while ago. Where did we get with AT when we raised the question?
Your Worship, so we have discussed this. We're in the process of discussing this with Alberta Transportation, and it will be rectified shortly. I'll leave it at that.
Good. Anything else, Deputy Mayor? No, thank you. Councillor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just say that it's good to be home. I will make a comment that in my travels, there was absolutely no rain anywhere I went. So perhaps I can bring that sunshine back to Stony Plain now that I'm home.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bennett. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a few quick comments in respect to some of the recycling changes. First of all, a question to administration. How are we monitoring or enforcing our current Rotary Recycling Center?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Laurie, I guess we're monitoring and enforcing. I know we have part-time staff who are there helping people with their decisions or their choices or where to put things. Other than that, I'm not aware of any other enforcement methods that we're using.
Yeah, Your Worship, maybe just to add to that too, I don't think that we've specifically made any changes that I'd be aware of. So, I mean, I think the typical ask of our staff there are to monitor who's coming in. If they see something that's not right, to bring it to their attention, so on and so forth. And then just, I mean, further to that though, that site's open. It can be used 24/7. And as the general manager indicated, we have part-time staff there, usually during the day, most days kind of thing, but there is open access.
Okay. And also we do have a video surveillance camera there as well.
Yeah. And the reason why I bring this to attention is I'm seeing a disturbing trend of people recommending that rather than abiding by the new rules that have been put in place, to simply dump it at the recycling center. So I've got a little bit of a growing concern because our intent with this, I mean, obviously this was not something that the town decided upon. This was something that was pushed down upon based on global recycling changes and some challenges that have happened. And essentially, the word they use is contamination. And if we continue to accept contaminated recycling and send it to our processing facilities, this program will become more and more and more damaged to a point where we may not even have a recycling program anymore, which would be a complete shame. So I'm hoping at some point in time we can take a look and we can make sure that we're not receiving a large volume of contaminated recycling at a Rotary Recycling Center. In addition to that, I've personally seen and checked many bags that have been sitting out. They are receiving the stickers, but they are not receiving the actual indication on the sticker as to what's wrong. I've had many residents contact me. They've sent me pictures of their bags, so on and so forth. Some, honestly, even with the picture of the bag that I've received and the sticker on it, I haven't been able to tell what they've done wrong. That brings me to the second, though, is in respect to the bags get stickered, the residents don't necessarily bring them back up. And so with the recent rains and the floods that we had, I can tell you, for instance, in my subdivision, we had many go floating down the rivers that were the streets and are now strewn all over our subdivision. And those who actually left them there won't be held to any account or any responsibility. And now it's up to the unfortunate residents whose lawns or boulevards they ended up in to figure out what to do with them, because they were left because they were wrong. So now somebody who has nothing to do with that, because it was allowed to be left out, is now having to go through and sort a bag of sopping wet recycling that really they have no responsibility for. So in addition to maybe some of what we're doing, you know, maybe we want to make sure that we're definitely being very accurate and very informative when we are denying recycling through our contractors, so that residents are aware of exactly what's wrong with there, that we're utilizing our resources to make sure that bags, boxes, etc., are not sitting on curbs and boulevards for days on end after collection days, and so on and so forth. And the last one, I don't know if administration can answer this, but prior to recycling changes, many residents were putting out their newspapers in grocery bags instead of blue bags. Common thing to occur, and many residents were complaining about the fact that blue bags are expensive. Grocery bags had at least allowed them to put the papers out, still recycle them. Now I'm hearing from several people that their newspapers are being refused if they're put out in grocery bags. So is this actually the case? Because understandably, grocery bags themselves are not accepted, but technically neither are the blue bags. So are we going to force residents to buy a blue bag to put the recycling in, or will our contractor actually take the newspapers in a shopping bag instead?
Your worship, through you to Councillor Laurie, I'm unaware of the newspaper and grocery bag question, so I will get the answer to that and report back. And again, we will, in addition to the questions about stickers, et cetera, we'll continue to ask questions and monitor the performance of our contractor and work with them to give residents the information that they need. And if we need to up our game there, then we'll certainly talk to GFL about doing that.
And your worship, too, to add further, I think, and the GM can correct me here, but also, I mean, part of our contract at the beginning there, you referred to contamination. So when they come and pick up our bins from the recycle center, I don't believe that they go through each and every one, but they do their own spot checks. And if there's generally an accepted level of contamination, and if we exceed that in too many spot checks or tests or whatever, they can bill us for that, or essentially, I think that is the contractual thing. They can charge us more for their time to sort and so on and so forth. So that would be the check-in point, or how we would become aware that our contamination is exceeding a certain level. Again, it's our staff there aren't monitoring or checking every single bag that would go through there. That would be how we would be made aware of our contamination levels for.
Excellent. And maybe if it's not already being done, maybe some signage at our Rotary Recycling Center with the new recycling rules and some tips and tricks would be a great place to put it, so that residents who are bringing their bags there can actually take a look and maybe see something right in front of their face. I know we've communicated it out in every channel possible, and it continues, but we continue to hear from residents on a platform to which we already communicate on that they haven't heard of the changes. They don't know what the changes are. So every opportunity that we have to do so, I think so, but it's just something that I've noticed, and it's something I feel worthwhile mentioning to administration so you can be aware of. And lastly, as well, I'd like to wish everybody a wonderful summer. Thank you very much for covering for me last Tuesday at our GMP meeting. Very happy to report that the soccer team that I coached was successful in city finals. They went undefeated, but due to a technicality, we ended up playing in the bronze medal game instead of the gold medal game because of goal differential. So they still won the bronze. It was a fantastic week of playoffs for them. So thank you very much for covering for me last week so I could be a part of that with them as their coach. Thank you very much to Councillor or Deputy Mayor Meyer for bringing up the weeds along 779. I had it on my list as well. I noticed today as well that coming out of one of the intersections, they're so tall it actually impedes your vision onto the road. So definitely time for those to be taken care of, and I'm glad administration's on it. Other than that, thank you very much, Your Worship.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And
Laurie, with regards to the usage at the recycling, is there times that you're seeing that there's or I guess to administration, a higher usage there, that maybe we could have somebody there during those times as opposed to, sporadically throughout the week, or are you already doing that?
Your worship, through you to Councillor Matties, I'm not aware of any revisions to potential schedules or whatever, but certainly we can have conversations with our staff and see if alternatives are recommended or what we might do in the future. I note that others are increasing their staff time at recycle centers. However, that does come at a cost. So I guess that's a consideration for the future.
I guess if we could just focus on peak use times, if it's possible, that would be great.
Okay, and then through my time on council, I've heard of one incident where we've used our video surveillance to charge an individual for dumping wrong stuff in there. So we also have that that available to us as well, if it becomes too much of a concern. I think Councillor Laurie is correct. One of the reasons why the global recycling economy changed was because of the garbage and contamination that we were throwing in the recycling that were not accepted. And they just finally put their foot down and said, we're not accepting it, period. There's X number percentage of stuff that is not contaminated, we'll take. If it's more than X percent, then we're all sending it back. So we just need to be aware of that. And speaking of recycling, just a couple of comments. The recycling coach app that has been changed from my waste app and to what our website states about what is acceptable for blue bags and stuff do not 100% match. So if we can get that rectified before we go out and post signs at the rural recycling center so that we have the actual accurate information. And summer sessions is in full swing. Hopefully it's summer. As Councillor Bennett has said, she's back now, so sunshine has followed her. And if it rains the next couple of Wednesdays, she is over there. I'll give her direct line if you want to complain to her. With that, excellent work, administration and staff, for the work that's provided in the agenda package that was done for us. And members of council, thank you very much for reading and bringing your thinking hats and conversations for us all to consider some alternate perspectives. Have a great summer, and we'll see you on August 19th. Adjourned.